Hey, what time is it? It's time for another sermon by the prophet of the One True Gaming Podcast. You know what? I've always wondered why my singing career didn't take off. I mean, obviously, my voice is like that of an angel, as you all just witnessed. Anyway, because I couldn't make it as a rock star, now I'm talking shit in my basement and interviewing people about their favorite gaming memories growing up. Ha ha! The good news is I'm not just another loser in his mom's basement. Number one, it's my own basement, bitches. My mom's not the one that told me to do this. It was God. And by God, I mean Miyamoto the Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack the Holy Ghost appeared to me in prophetic vision, saying, create the One True Gaming Podcast. And all I got to do is interview people about their favorite gaming memories growing up. So here we are. That's what we're doing. And today we have the Regions Free Gaming Podcast. I probably fucked that up. I said Regions Free. I think it's Region Free Gaming's Podcast. Let me check this out. It's not Regions Free Gamer Podcast. It's Region Free Gamers Podcast. I fucked up. I moved the S from gamers to regions. I don't know why any of you listen to me. You might as well just freaking burn. You should burn your podcast app. Not just my podcast, but all of them. I've ruined it. I don't know why I'm in this mood today. I'm in a little bit of a weird mood. I wouldn't say it's bad. I wouldn't say it's good. But the point being is my guest today is not the entire crew of the Region Free Gamers Podcast, because I knew there was 3 of them when I reached out. I didn't know not only is there some alumni that are not currently active on the podcast, meaning there's some guests that are alumni that are not not guests, hosts. Why can't I talk today? God damn it. There's some hosts that are alumni that are no longer actively hosts, and then there's some new hosts. So in total, I think there's like 5 to 7 dudes that have been part of this project, which makes sense because they put out a lot of content. Out of the 3 podcast guests that are now... Why do I keep calling them guests? You know, I have this rule that I don't edit. I mean, I do edit out like the dead space in my intros, but I don't retake them. I sit down, I hit the record button. I'm like, no matter what comes out, that's what the intro is going to be. And I am super tempted to fucking delete this shit because I'm fucking it up. You know why I'm in grumpy ass mood today? Because I haven't had any good games to play recently. What happened is I binged the Mass Effect trilogy, like all the way through Mass Effect 1 through Mass Effect 3 with the new Legendary Edition. It's awesome, by the way. You should play it. If you like sci-fi in any way, shape, or form, you like space, and you like shooting shit, cool characters, and spaceships, and aliens. I mean, everything that I like in life, this game has, and the trilogy was awesome. And you know when you play a really good game that totally sucks you in? Like, I casually play lots of games, but there's really only 1 to, if I'm lucky, 3 games a year that really suck me in and take me to the dark world, the nether realm, the limbo space, where I forget everything about life and I'm just in the game. It's all about the game. I'm all consumed about the game. Doesn't happen that much, but it did happen with the Mass Effect trilogy. And after you binge, when you overindulge on a game because it's just hitting those dopamine receptors, they're just hitting on the spot, there's just this natural consequence. There's a price to be paid with that much pleasure. It's everything in life. If I'm thinking about life in general, any type of pleasure, sex, food, sleep, water, video games, sports, music, any sort of sensation. There's this, any drugs. We all know I like drugs. From doing lots of drugs in my life, this segues into a lesson that I learned through some bad drug experiences. You can't get greedy. I got a little greedy with Mass Effect. I should have split sort of the 98 hours it took me to beat the trilogy again, and I had never actually finished the 3rd game, and somehow by a miracle of God never got spoiled. And I loved it. The ending was awesome. People hated. I remember all the hugabaloo back when the game came out and how the ending was such dog shit. I know they patched it. They had the extended cut, all that jazz. People were still unhappy with it. I didn't mind it. I got emotional. It was awesome. But the problem is I should have spread that out across a wider range of time instead of cramming it in 98 hours in like the course of, it was like 2.5 weeks or something. I went all in. Like, kids, fuck you. I don't know who you are. Find a new dad. Wife, if you divorce me, whatever. All that matters is Mass Effect. I'm Commander Shepard, and I need to save the goddamn galaxy from the Reapers, because don't you guys get it? This is a conspiracy theory that's real. Every 50,000 years they come and they harvest all the civilization information and they take us and they turn us into a new Reaper. And they're actually part of a sentient AI that's been around since the dawn of time, and it's a big cycle, and that's how they keep life managed in the galaxy. Can't you see this is important? Apparently no one else gave a shit. But the problem is I overindulged, and now my dopamine receptors are all fucked up. No other games are fun, and I can't record intros. Anyway, that was a nice segue that kept you all distracted while I was trying to look up the names of the hosts at Region Free Gamers podcast, because there's so many. I wanted to make sure that I got the host that I have on today, which is Anthony. I'm pretty sure. I knew it was an A, and the other host name is Arnaldo. Forgive me. It's normally I record these intros right after I finish the podcast while everything is fresh on my mind. I was stacking a bunch of podcasts on the same day, recorded like 4 in the same day, and so I wasn't doing that. And I recorded this podcast. By the time you guys get a hold of it, because my turnaround time is so fast. So by the time you listen to this recording might be like 2-3 months old. It's a month old as of me recording this intro. So that's a long-winded way of saying, Anthony, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong and you're actually Arnaldo. I know for sure that you're not Paul, but we talk about Paul, Anthony, and Arnaldo, as well as the alumni hosts that were on past episodes of Region Free Gamers, the podcast Fluent in Gaming. Yes, I finally got to it. That's our guest, Region Free Gamers, the podcast Fluent in Gaming. They're awesome. I first ran across them. Paul's Game Room is the Instagram handle of one of the hosts that couldn't make it for this podcast recording. Paul's Game Room. He is like super into JRPGs and loves the weeb shit like me. So I first was introduced to them by running across Paul, I believe, seeing some of his posts. I'm pretty sure he said something positive about Suikoden 2. So I was like, sign me up, marry me, fuck a prenup, put a ring on it, bitch. Let's go. That's I have a soft spot in the heart for Suikoden. Anyway, if I got it right and it's not Arnaldo, Anthony joins the podcast for us today. He is one of the hosts of the Region Free Gamers podcast, the podcast Fluent in Gaming. Make sure to check them out. As always, I will put all the applicable links in the podcast description. I've also wanted to start talking just a little bit about the games that I've been playing recently to give you guys an update, because many people have been reaching out to me and saying that they enjoy the intros of the podcast. And the last couple I recorded, I made them a little bit shorter because I was thinking, spend less time ranting, get to the good shit. Turns out some people think the intro is part of the good shit. Oh, I feel so good. I feel so warm and fuzzy inside. I can feel my ego getting bigger and better and stronger. And soon that ego will turn to darkness, and the darkness will turn to anger, and the anger will turn to hate. I want to be a Sith Lord so bad, but deep down, I know I'm too much of a bitch, and I'm just not mean enough. I think dark shit is so cool. Dark music. I think all the anti-heroes are the coolest anti-heroes in all of JRPGs. Magus from Chrono Trigger, coolest character. He's the bad guy, kind of. He's like a sub-bad guy at first, then he turns good. He's just super badass. I love the anti-heroes. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. I was supposed to be talking about what I've been playing recently, and I'm stealing this idea from the Retro Hangover podcast. You guys should also check them out. Region Free Gamers and Retro Hangover are the first 2 podcasts that I was exposed to when I started this podcast and started poking around on Instagram trying to find other gamer podcasts. I had Retro Hangover on really early on. I think they were episode 20, 30 something. I have yet to, I reached out to Region Free Gamers a long time ago. And you know what the truth is? Those motherfuckers snuffed me for a while, but I'm a persistent bitch. You cannot stop me. No, people are busy and you get hit up all the time, and I don't hold it against them. But I'm glad that my persistence paid off and I got them on the podcast. But anyway, stealing an idea from Retro Hangover. I've been playing recently. Mass Effect kind of ruined me. So I've been piddle-paddling, trying things out, but I did find some cool shit that I'll be talking about and doing some more videos. Number 1, the PC port, the native PC port of Super Mario 64. Someone reverse engineered that game, made a native PC port. I did a couple of videos on it like 6 months ago. Of course, now that it's a native PC version and it's on the internet and Nintendo can't kill it, hard as they might try, it's out there, and now the mods are rolling in. And I love Super Mario 64. I love that game. That might be one of the greatest games. It's still, like, you can play the original Mario 64 on a 64. It still feels good. And now with the PC port, you have the HD shit, you have the mods, you have the frame rate shit, and they have now added ray trace lighting. And something about the combination between retro graphics and super modern modern lighting techniques, real-time lighting, ray trace lighting. Looks awesome. I've been playing that. So I downloaded the PC port, which I've had for a while. I downloaded an updated version of that and trying to figure out how to get all these mods to work. Downloading shit from GitHub, knowing nothing about coding. And then she's like, I'm going to throw this file in this folder and see what happens. And 99% of the time it doesn't work. And then eventually you get a couple mods working. It's still in the early days. So if you want to play around with Mario 64 with these mods, especially the ray trace lighting mod, it is a major pain in the ass. And there's not a lot of tutorials out there because it's still kind of in this like coder community. It's not really public yet, even though it's on GitHub and you can download it. There's not a lot of good content out there. So I'd recommend actually waiting. It's super buggy, but I have some cool footage coming from that. I've had some good times playing around with that. And then I also found an unofficial Unreal Engine 4 remake of Mario 64, separate from the PC port. It's not the original version modded. It's from the ground up remade in Unreal Engine 4. It's just the castle and the surrounding areas. That's pretty dope. Gonna have some footage of that coming up. And then Kryzen CRYZENXX. I don't know how you pronounce it. He's a YouTuber that's been working on this Ocarina of Time remake in Unreal Engine for years. Like, I don't know how. Maybe the gods love us. Miyamoto the Father decided to grace us with his presence. That did not get cease and desisted for like 6 or 7 years. It finally did get cease and desisted. His YouTube channel is down. The word on the street is Nintendo kind of started knocking around and finally said, you got to stop this shit, bro. And he remade a huge, massive chunk of Ocarina of Time. And I still have the game. And now that it's way harder to find and it's been shut down and cease and desisted, I'm going to start posting videos because fuck you, Nintendo. Then why don't you just give us a legitimate Ocarina of Time remake? Huh? Oh, I'm sorry, this dude, ostensibly probably in his basement, spending his own money for the last however many years, made something better than you've ever done and you got to get pissed about it? No, why don't you hire the dude, give him a budget, give him a team, and fucking turn it into a real project? God, they make me so mad. Nintendo, I'm just grumpy. Like, even the Mario 64 shit, the port on the Switch doesn't even have widescreen support. And then they cease and desist this Unreal remake. I mean, sorry, with all your bajillions of dollars, these smart-ass kids are doing better than what you're doing. Like, I don't know. It kind of pisses me off. I love the whole modding PC homebrew community, the fan shit. Fans take stuff that they love and they make it cooler. I think that's awesome. If if in the proverbial fantasy world was somehow able to start a video game studio, I would support the fan shit. Like, for example, Steam, Black Mesa. It's this remake mod of Half-Life. The team got to a certain point. I don't know exactly how far along they got before Valve stepped in and decided to officially support the mod and put it on Steam. And now you can go, if it's like $12 or something, you can play Black Mesa. Valve, and they did, I don't even think Valve even did any sort of development on it. They just said, you guys are obviously huge fans. You know what you're doing. We're not going to fight you. In fact, we're going to support you. Do you guys need any help? And now it's one of the coolest games on Steam. You can replay Half-Life, one of the greatest FPSs of all time, with better graphics and some modern conveniences, quality of life improvements, and they totally improved the last few levels. If you played Half-Life, it's super awesome. Then you kind of get to this alien world at the end. It's called Xen, X-E-N, or I'm pretty sure. And it gets a little spotty. I would say it's the weakest part. Overall, still a masterpiece of a game. They, legitimately, in my opinion, improved upon the experience over the original. Not just, gave it a shiny coat of new paint and made it more convenient and more streamlined, which in and of itself would be worth it to me. But they actually made the experience better. And that's why I've been just I'm always diving into fan-made shit. But that's what I got back into after finishing the Mass Effect trilogy. So you'll see more of that coming along. I'm going to have footage from the Ocarina of Time remake, Mario 64 Unreal Engine remake, and also the PC port mods with ray trace lighting. And you can also swap out the models. So part of the reason this intro is going so far south and I'm rambling is I've been trying to confirm that it was Anthony and not Arnaldo that I talked to, and I can't confirm it. As I've been talking, I was rereading our Instagram messages. I'm like, I swear he told me his name somewhere. I think he actually told me and clarified which of the hosts he is during the podcast. Obviously, I can't listen to the podcast while I'm recording. So again, for the the final apology to Anthony and or Arnaldo, which of the A's that was on the podcast. I'm sure when you listen to this intro, you're going to be rolling your eyes. Look, if you think that I'm going to have any level of professionalism, or if you think that I'm going to be able to logically deduce something that should be obvious to you, don't have that much faith in me. Chances are I'm going to blow it. Just accept that I'm going to disappoint you, and our relationship will be so much better. I'm actually a pretty fun guy. You just have to accept that I'm stupid, and my memory is terrible, and that has nothing to do with the fact that I've been smoking weed every day for 20 years. Absolutely not. Lies. Oh yeah, and last but not least, Mortal Kombat New Era is a Mugen mod that I highly recommend. Mugen is a community-sourced fighting game engine. I'm not exactly sure what it's based on, but there's tons of fighting game mods. You can play any character, any game you want. Mortal Kombat New Era is this all-encompassing mod where they've taken every character from the first 3 Mortal Kombats and they've added a bunch. They have freaking Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. They have Lara Croft, RoboCop, Predator, just tons of shit. And all of them have fatalities, animalities, brutalities, and story slides. It's wild as shit. In fact, it's so wild that TikTok banned my video. I had a video of seeing 2 of the Lara Croft fatalities and Scooby-Doo fatalities, and I lost my shit because they're so wild. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's on my Instagram. TikTok took it down and said it violated community guidelines because I said the nasty D word. I said the dick word. Yeah, that's precisely what it was. You can say fuck and shit and damn. You could probably even say the C word on TikTok, but no. I said Scooby is eating Goro's dick. I was laughing because the way the animation worked in the fatality is the dog was eating the body, but they placed it right on his crotch. Probably not intended. Maybe it was intended. But apparently you can't say eat a dick on TikTok, but you can say fuck a bitch. Go figure. I don't know. And then Instagram, who's usually way more anal, pun intended, about their community guidelines, didn't give a shit. Nothing. It's really, really weird. The other thing, I've been posting these Sprite videos, playing around with 2 different AI algorithms, RITE, right, and DAIN, Dane. They're these machine learning algorithms that you can download, and they try to use sample sets, data sets, to artificially inject frames into low frame rate content. And I was curious. I'm like, I want to see what this looks like on cool fighting game sprites. I did Street Fighter first, and then I did some Mortal Kombat shit, and then of course, if anyone knows anything about fighting games, King of Fighters 13 is one of the best examples of sprite animation ever. And they have this character, Maya Shirunai, I think is how you pronounce it, or Mai Shirunai. She's like this ninja chick she's like the Asian ninja version of Lara Croft. Her proportions, specifically her chest proportions, have always been just redonkulous. And her animations in King of Fighters 13 are just the most ridiculous animated boobs I've ever seen in my entire life. The bounce is defies all physics. And of course, the brothers need to see what that looks like in 60 frames a second. I post that on TikTok. This violates community guidelines. Meanwhile, there's 1,000 underage girls in the tiniest teeny bikinis. This one song, something about itty bitty titties and a fat ass. I don't know, some pop song I'm unaware of. It was trending. All these girls are lip syncing to it, shaking their tits in the camera. A lot of them, you look at them that's suspect. You look 14. They don't get violated. But meanwhile, sprite animation does. I think I angered the TikTok gods. I must have done something wrong. They've been on my ass lately. If you guys are still listening, thanks. You know the drill. Like, share, comment, share the good news of the Gaming Memories Gospel. You shall be blessed. Make sure to check out Region Free Gamers Podcast, the podcast Fluent in Gaming. So Paul, Anthony, and Arnaldo are your hosts. Region Free Gamers Podcast, Instagram, Region Free Gamers Podcast, Twitter. Check them out. I will put all those podcast links in the description. Like, share, comment the good news of the Gaming Memories Gospel. You'll be blessed. I say these things in the name of me, of Motor the Father, Kojima the Son, and Kamek the Holy Ghost. Amen, and enjoy the show. All right, so I've been stalking the Regions Free Gamer Podcast online. I was not aware that it was up to 5 people involved. Why don't you give us a breakdown of sort of a brief history of the podcast, what your format is, and everyone who's involved, and where people can find you guys online?
Sure. So it basically started, 2018, we launched our first episode. I think it was January 11th or something like that, because it's been 3 years now. So my math isn't completely fucked. But it started off with 4 of us originally. Myself, Paul, Ozzy, Masa. Masa is no longer with us. Ozzy is no longer with us, actually. So the current rotation of hosts is now me, Paul, Jeff, also known as G-Spot Gaming on Instagram, Anthony, also known as Polybits on Instagram, and Kelly, also known as Sierra Night Gaming on Instagram. And basically, we just do, like, it's hard to even explain. We started off, I think, trying to do sort of fun history type podcast about different aspects of gaming, like different franchises, different systems that we were interested, and it sort of spun off into more of a variety show type thing. Like, it's every episode is focused around a topic, but there is no sort of structure to what we'll talk about and how we'll talk about it. Sometimes we'll talk about a single game, sometimes we'll talk about an entire franchise of games and their history from like their beginning up to modern day. Sometimes we'll talk about a particular developer that we really like. Sometimes we'll talk about a particular system that we really like. So it's really like a grab bag of whatever we think is interesting at the time. And then we also do more off the cuff episodes. Like, we have a running series called What Have You Been Playing, where we just get around and talk about the different games we've been playing recently, things that we think are interesting, and things that we might look into buying. We've done listener questions, listener stories episodes. We actually did a hot takes episode where we had listeners send us their spiciest video game hot takes. That was an interesting one for sure.
Did you have to do any like editing, or did you just let everything fly?
Paul does our editing. I don't think we cut anything out of it though.
Okay.
we're pretty liberal when it comes to the actual content. We'll cut for quality's sake, but not because we're afraid of being bullied online.
Censorship sake.
Though I am definitely afraid of being bullied online constantly. And then we do have a spin-off series that we've done once called The King of Games. It was sort of a bonus episode thing. We did it on the year 1998, where we picked 16 games, pitted them head to head against each other to pick the best game in 1998.
Ooh, what was the result of that? Do you remember the 16 games?
I don't remember all of them, but I remember the top 4. I think Metal Gear Solid came in number 1.
That makes sense.
Half-Life 1. I'm gonna fuck this up. Half-Life 1 came in second. Ocarina of Time, I believe, was third. And Gran Turismo was fourth, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't know Ocarina of Time and Metal Gear Solid 1 were the same year.
Yep.
Those are two big hitters.
So was Banjo-Kazooie. So was, what else did we have on there? Spyro the Dragon, Panzer Dragoon Saga, Parasite Eve, I think. Xenogears was 98 as well. That was a stellar year. People go back and forth about what the best year in video games is, and that's like one of the ones that's consistently up there.
I've always felt like 95 to 2000 was sort of the pinnacle of my golden era for me personally. Have you heard of a podcast called Retrograde Amnesia?
No.
They do you like RPGs?
Yeah, I love them.
Okay. So you mentioned Xenogears, which I'm not affiliated. I've never talked to these guys. I'm not affiliated to them. I just legitimately fucking love their show.
Yeah.
I have never seen someone go as hard and as deep into JRPGs as these guys. The format is it's 2 dudes.
Okay.
And every week they play the same section of a JRPG.
Oh.
And they talk about it. And they talk about literally everything from the beginning to end. They did Xenogears. It was 58 episodes, and they were somewhere between 2 to 4 hours. So we're talking like 90 hours of Xenogears content. They talk about every line of dialogue, but they like research stuff and they figure out what the developers were thinking. I mean,
that's
it's like,
awesome.
If you're it's for like the most hardcore JRPG nerdhead
for sure.
And, it took me like 6 months to work my way through Xenogears, but it was like a really interesting experience. And I almost they're doing Chrono Cross right now. They've only done Xenogears is the only one they finished. They started doing like side episodes where they'll do smaller ones for people who don't want to like commit 120 hours. to a single game.
Yeah.
But they're doing Chrono Cross right now, but it's a great way to play along. Like if you want to replay a game and play the same section as them, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a very interesting way of experiencing a game, even if you don't own it. Like, if you couldn't afford it or can't, don't have time to play it on your own. It reminds me of, I can't remember the name of the podcast, and there's several that are like this, but I remember there was a podcast that was about the movie Heat. And every episode was they would watch, I think it was 2 minutes of the movie Heat, and then they would talk about it.
Yeah.
And so every episode they were just watching the entire movie, but in chunks. And it seems like a similar experience, but probably a lot more in depth since it's a JRPG.
Yeah, they go, it just depends on your style. If you like Retronauts and sort of like the business and more development side, they'll pepper in because they'll track down this translation is weird. Why do they do this? We'll reference that. Oh, this soundtrack has this weird vocal sample. Let's track down then they track down where it came from.
That's insane.
The developer snuck that in there, and they find old interviews, and they just scour the internet, and it's just it's the deepest JRPG podcast I've ever come across. And you brought up Xenogears, and that is a big, the game, I would say it should have scored higher, but they really fucked up the last half, or the last third of that game. Yeah. The second disc, whatever, fiasco. Damn. That's cool. So you guys have been going on, you said, for 6 years?
3 now.
3 years. I don't know where I got 6 from. Samsonite. I was way off. And you are, okay, so we introduced the whole crew. Your thing said Andy, now it says Paul. I'm confused.
I'm using Paul's Zoom account. Okay. That's why it's on
because there. I initially said I've interacted with Paul online before, and then I was like, wait, shit, is that Paul?
Yeah.
But no, you're not Paul, you're using Paul's.
You are Andy. Right now. Arnie.
All right, okay.
There you go.
Tell us about you. Oh, I see you have this big ass collection, but I can't quite pick out. What's in your collection back there?
This is, the section you're looking at is mostly PS2, PS3, PS1 stuff right there. Where's my hand? There, right there where my hand is. But I've got about 5 shelves back here running from NES to Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii, and then this one's Xbox, the second one. And then PlayStation. I've also got a box Virtual Boy up there in the corner, a box TurboGrafx 16 over there.
Do you play the Virtual Boy at all?
I played it a couple of times. I only have Mario Tennis for it right now, so I got my ass whooped a couple times, and I was like, I'm gonna put this away for now. If I got more games, I would absolutely play it. I think the form factor is so stupid and amazing. I love everything about it. I'm a big fan. Red and black is my favorite color scheme. So I was like, if I was gonna design a console, it would look probably a lot like that.
Yeah.
But I've been seeing a few people that have made I just saw on Twitter a couple days ago this guy that published blueprints for people to 3D print a consoleized Virtual Boy. So basically you would 3D print this housing case for it, and then he has instructions on how to insert the guts of it, and then you can hook it up to your TV and play your Virtual Boy like a regular console.
Oh.
Yeah.
Dang. Dude, there's so much cool shit like that. People going down.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I am not the smartest person on the planet. I'm so grateful that there are so many people that are so much more intelligent than I am to do crazy shit like this, because I have no patience or technical knowledge, but I love experiencing it.
Yeah. How does the Virtual Boy play retroactively going back? It's as sort of a retro item. Is it still fun to play when you play it?
I would say it's fun for the novelty of it. I haven't played I know everybody says, I think it's, what's it called? I think there's a WarioWare game, or no, not WarioWare. There's a Wario Land game on there that's supposed to be amazing.
Really yeah.
There's the Jack Brothers, which is a Atlas game, something insane, $600 or something.
There's a robot fighting game I played.
Yes. Oh, fuck.
Wow, what's that called?
It's called, oh god,
Virtual Boy.
I know exactly what you're talking. Teleroboxer. That's what it's called.
Teleroboxer. Yeah.
Teleroboxer. That game is also supposed to be hard as all fuck. There's a horror game that I can't remember the name. I think it's called Innsmouth or something like that. It's based off of, if I'm remembering correctly, it's based off of what's the guy, the author? He's an old horror author, H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, Lovecraft.
It's supposed to be Lovecraftian style type stuff, but all those games are so expensive. It's impossible to collect for the system.
as a collector, I know people have been complaining about it, but I haven't been watching. Like, how much of price has risen in like the last 2 years? Isn't it a lot?
A shit ton. Yeah. Really, I mean, even within the last year, because of I think because of a combination of like coronavirus making everybody have to stay home and sort of have to find new ways to entertain themselves, and then people, sort of channeling a lot of that time into video games. Like video games as a whole have gone up, but retro games in particular have seen like a massive jump. I think it depends on the system. Like I know PS3 was surging like crazy just a little while ago because Sony was gonna close the PS3 online store.
Yeah.
So there, that shot through the roof. Vita's always been super expensive and that's gotten crazy. Even like modern stuff, like a lot of Switch releases now are like $100+ that haven't come out like super long time ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's all over the place. It's becoming harder and harder to get into the hobby, I think. Like if I got into it like 2009-ish, I didn't really start collecting until maybe like 11 or 12.
Okay.
But I can't imagine somebody trying to today be like, "Oh, I want to start collecting PS1, PS2 type stuff." I feel like the barrier to entry is so much higher now, not only because the prices are higher, but because people have sort of wised up to the best places to go. Like thrift stores are sort of barren now. Garage sales aren't the same as they used to be. Even flea markets, like sellers know what they have a lot more now. And even the ones that don't, I think just overprice so they don't get taken.
That sucks. I had a PS1 only collection because that's like my glory days, and it was mainly like JRPGs, and it was probably like 100 and something games, which is pretty big, even though there was like 7,000 million games on that on that console. But I had a moment of weakness where I was early married. I needed some money, and I sold the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I got like $1,900. It was quite a bit of money
at the time. Absolutely.
At the time, and I really wish I wouldn't have done it. And it's like the same reason. I've never had the like ability to get like to jump. I'm not going to jump back in and start all over again, seeing the prices. Like just seeing I was telling you, Suikoden 2 is like my favorite game JRPG of all time. Just trying to get that again. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. Like this is not going to happen. But I got way into emulating, which set me down another rabbit hole. Speaking of, you were talking about how you're grateful you're not the smartest person on the earth. In the like retro world of emulators and like ROM hacks and mod hacks and texture hacks, there is so much cool shit.
Oh, absolutely.
There is so much cool shit. I was playing a Doom 2 mod that's Sonic, the 3D Sonic, and it's like better than any 3D Sonic I've ever played. It's amazing. Sick. I'm gonna have it's just like someone made that. I don't know who made it, but
I've seen. I was watching the other day. I was watching somebody play it was like a Link to the Past Super Metroid randomizer, where I think I've talked about this before, but I'm like in love with this concept where basically it's like all the items for both games get randomly shuffled around.
So you can't memorize where to go.
And so you don't know where anything's gonna show up. In theory, like the game's designed so like no matter what the combination is, you can still beat the game, but it'll be like maybe you'll get like the screw attack in like the second room of the game or something, or maybe you'll find like the hook shot where the sword should be, and then you have to start the game without having a sword for a while. Like, and the way it works,
because there's like certain parts, at least the way Zelda is designed, is like usually the item you need gets you access to like the next area and vice versa. So like, what if you get the wrong item and you can't get to where you need to go and it breaks the game?
Well, theoretically, the seeding of the game should prevent that from happening.
Oh, okay.
Because like you can find these things in like random chests, like in the overworld. Like you don't necessarily get the item just by beating the boss. It's like it could be in a random chest somewhere that you don't know where it is. But in the crossover one, the thing I liked about it is that sometimes there are certain areas where if you go into like a door in Zelda or you go through something in Metroid, it'll move you to the other game. Like you could be Link in 1 second, go through a door, and now you're Samus in like Metroid again. And I was like, this is insane. Like, what is happening?
Damn, I've never even heard of that. I need to look that up. So it's Ocarina X
Link to the
Metroid.
Past X Super Metroid Randomizer is what it's called.
There it is. Randomizer.
Yeah. And so stuff like that, I've always been fascinated in. Like, I've never, even though I have like a ton of physical stuff, I've never shied away from emulation or some of these other mods. I'm not as into it as I should be because I don't have like a ton of computing space or computing power. But like, I love seeing what people do with stuff like that. And especially when it comes to like speed runs. Like, I don't know if do you watch Games Done Quick or like...
I do, yes.
Yeah. So like whenever that comes around in the summer or the fall, I'm always like, I gotta see what's going on here. And my favorite ones are always the like glitch runs where they like hop out some barrier in the overworld and like teleport themselves to the end of the game in like 10 seconds. People's ability and creativity to like explore video games like that is incredible.
I like watching the glitch ones, like to see the most creative ways they can break the game. And then I also like to compare that with like the 100% natural runs, like just to see how fast people can get at beating the game, the way it was quote designed to be beaten. I watched I think a Symphony of the Night 100% run. It was like 45 minutes.
Yep.
Like, it was insane. And it's like, you can't make a single mistake for 45 minutes. Did you see that headline that some dude beat Grand Theft Auto in 9 hours without taking a single point of damage or hitting anything?
What the fuck? Like GTA 5?
GTA 5, 9 hours, completed it without ever, like, as far as dinging another car or taking a single...
That's insane.
It's insane.
That's
like,
insane.
How is that even possible?
Yeah, but that's the other end of the spectrum, which I also find endless joy in, is people who give themselves, like, insane challenges for no reason other than like to prove they can do it, like the guy who played Dark Souls on like the Guitar Hero controller or whatever. Like shit like that I also find endlessly fun because I'm like, that sounds like something that I could have come up with. I'd never be good enough to pull it off, but like watching somebody execute like something I've imagined is endlessly entertaining.
What got you into like what sparked you to start collecting?
I had like, so I grew up, my parents had like got divorced when I was like really, really young. So I always had two places I would go and visit. And both of my parents, thankfully, were really cool as far as like me getting into video games. So I remember when I would go to my dad's house, like that's where the N64 was. That's where I would play those games. And I'd play with him or I'd play by myself. And then when I stayed with my mom, like that's where the PS1 was. That's where the Super Nintendo was. And like my aunt, I remember, got me a Sega Nomad for Christmas once. Like,
wait. I don't know if I've even heard. What is a Sega Nomad?
That's the, it's like the portable Sega Genesis, basically. Like, Sega made this giant, like this...
the actual fuck?
Like, this giant...
I've never heard of this. I feel terrible.
I've told this story on our show a million times, but, like, I never owned a Sega Genesis. I only ever owned a Sega Nomad. So, for the longest time, I didn't understand that, like, you could play, that those cartridges were Genesis games. I always thought that, like, they were to be played on this obnoxiously large contraption that takes like 10 AA batteries or some insane shit. It maybe runs for like 3 hours. It's crazy, but I loved it to death.
Wow, dude. I had a Game Gear growing up. I don't know if like I just was never. I literally, like, it's very rare. I'm almost embarrassed that I hear, like, I literally have zero memories and I've never heard of this fucking Nomad. Holy cow!
It's not like a super. I don't know that a lot of people grew up with it, honestly, but I remember it. I never knew. That was one thing I never knew. I could be misremembering this, but I think you can. It has like hookups, so you could technically hook it up to your television.
It does look like, I'm looking at the
to play.
The video.
So you could play Genesis games on your TV through it. Yes. And it has a controller port on the top, I think. But yeah, like shit like that. I was like, like it was nuts. So everybody around me was really like very like, nobody ever told me like don't play video games. Everybody was just like, here you go. Like, I don't think they ever thought it would amount to anything. I think I was just an annoying kid, and they were like, here, this will shut you up for a few hours, and I can have some peace and quiet. But eventually, as I got older, like, I sort of drifted away from that stuff, and my mom ended up giving away like pretty much all of my childhood stuff except for my PS1 games. I managed to hold on to those. And so when I got like a little bit older, I want to say like 2009 2009, 2010, I like randomly on YouTube, I started running across like retro game channels, retro game shows, and I was like, oh man, I remember playing some of this stuff, and it looked so fucking cool, especially in comparison. Like at this time, it was like the 360 sort of PS3 Wii era was starting up, where everything was like grim, dark, brown, gray, metallic, guns, fuck, you know, kill everyone. And I was super into it, but I was also like, wow, this stuff looks so colorful. It's so different from what I'm playing right now, and it's very like vibrant, exciting. Like the music's super cool. I kind of want to go back and like play some of the old stuff I had, but also look at the stuff that I didn't get to play ever because I wasn't in the zeitgeist. Like I wasn't like looking out for releases. I would just go to Toys R Us and like the first thing I saw on the shelf, I was like, oh, I'm getting this. And so I started little by little. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, so we didn't have like a ton of retro game stores or things like that.
Where do you live now, just for reference?
I live in Rhode Island. So now I'm on like the East Coast of the States. But when I was back there, like you could find some retro stuff, but it wasn't what it is like here in the States. Like you couldn't like go to a flea market and buy like NES, Super Nintendo stuff. So you would either go to a store or like our GameStop, I will always remember, was like a generation behind US releases. Like I remember when like the GameStops in the US were like completely decked out in like Xbox, PS3, Wii stuff. The GameStop in Puerto Rico was still selling like PS2, original Xbox, GameCube stuff. Like they held on to that stuff forever, and thank God they did, because I ended up finding a lot of cool stuff that I probably wouldn't have had the chance to get otherwise. But yeah, it was just that like want to go back. I feel like almost everybody else who does this, it's like that nostalgia just hits different, right?
Yeah.
And you always want to go back and relive some of that stuff, and just the curiosity of like, what wasn't I playing that I should have been playing? And it was, I did that for about 5 years just on my own, like going around doing conventions, because I moved to the States in 2013. I moved to Virginia to go to school and stuff like that. And so I was like going to flea markets. I started doing garage sales. I started like talking to people. They do MagFest up there. So I went to a video game convention for the first time. And I was like, holy shit, like this is a whole community. I have like people I can talk to about this stuff now. Like it's so much more. It's so nice to like find people that like get it.
Yeah.
You could sit down, have a conversation with, and won't look at you like you're crazy. Yeah. And then after all that, I think 2017 or 2016, I got on Instagram, and that was sort of the next step in that evolution. Is like now I'm seeing collections and games from all over the world all the time whenever I want, and that led me to meeting the other guys that originally started this podcast with us. And so that's pretty much the story, man. It starts from one kid's dream to get all his old shit back that his mom threw out.
It's a great story. So it sounds like the podcast has started and you jumped. How long was the podcast around before you jumped on?
I'm founding member. Like we started it together. Yep.
So you guys met on Instagram and then started it. Okay.
We met on Instagram and we just started talking. And after a while, we sort of were like, man, we love shooting the shit. Let's just record it, put it out there, and see if anybody wants to listen to it. Not ever thinking that like anybody would. The second people started downloading it, I was like, oh no, like we fucked up. Now people are gonna yell at us about all the things we got wrong and our audio quality sucking.
Yeah. What's been, if you had to pick an episode that someone should start with, what do you think? Okay, actually, what would you recommend as the first episode for a new listener, and what is your personal favorite episode?
That's such a tough question. It's like asking me to pick my favorite kid, and I definitely have one, but I don't want the world to know that I have one. I'd say if I was going to start somewhere, I would definitely not start with our earliest episodes, I'll tell you that much. One of our earlier episodes that I've always really loved is we did a Contra episode, all the games of the Contra series. That one I really liked. We did an in-depth dive on the Fire Emblem series, which was also really fun. And then if you're looking for something like not as intense, we did, what was it? What was that game? We did a Grand Theft Auto Vice City episode that I think has been like our most popular episode for forever. And that was extremely fun just because I love Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Like the whole vibe of that game is timeless. And as far as like personal favorite ones, we did a Persona 4 episode, which I love because that's like top 3 game of all time for me. And we did an Advanced Wars episode that is also like a series that's near and dear to my heart. And that one was extremely fun to talk about, you know, all sorts of weird little tidbits. And it's a series that I didn't think that people would enjoy listening about because it's like a turn-based strategy game. I was like, nobody's, you know, but it actually ended up doing really well. And I had a few people say that they loved that series and they were very happy that somebody had like talked about it. Yeah.
Wow. Dang, dude, Persona 4 is up. That's up there. I just got the like the Steam release, like the 4th time I bought that game.
Yep.
I don't know how many times I bought that game, but I played the first time I played it later, and it was I can't remember if it was like the. Remind me, there was Persona 4, then Persona 4 Golden?
Yes, Golden is the, like, re-release with, like, extra content and whatnot.
But that was Golden originally only Vita, and then it...
Yep, it was Vita, and then it got that Steam release.
I played it before the Steam release. I wonder if I didn't play Golden. Maybe I played just the original one.
Yeah, the original was PlayStation 2 exclusive, but I think the original one also got a Steam release. I could be wrong about that. So it could be the that you played the original. I played it. I want to say that game came out in like 08, 07, 08, around there. I ended up watching like some random guy talk about it. I'd never heard of Shin Megami Tensei or any of those games. Like, that was not something that was on my radar, but I heard him talk about it, and I was like, fuck, man, that sounds cool as shit. Like,
yeah.
You just fight God at the end of it. Like, so I went out to my GameStop. They had like 1 copy left. I remember it. It's like very vivid in my mind because if I'm not mistaken, it was the summer after I had graduated high school. And so I had a lot of like feelings about stuff because I was
about moving on, past
going to college,
yeah.
Doing all that stuff. So I remember I binged the crap out of it like early summer break, maybe like May to June or something like that. And by the end of it, I was like, I had not had an experience like that with a video game in a long time. I was like, I feel like these characters are my friends now.
Yes, yeah. It was, I just remember being like, finding out that at the end of the day, it was the freaking gas station attendant. Spoiler alert.
Yep.
The fucking gas, I'm like, that guy? I'm like, they got me. That's like the first person you talk to when you get into the town. And I'm like, they got me. The only thing I don't like about it is they didn't ever really... Like, there would have been no way for you to deduce that it was the gas station guy, that there was no hints or sort of like other things that added up like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it was him. It's so obvious. I think that would have made it like a little better.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like you talk to this person and then they never mention him or nothing. And then all of a sudden, by the way, it's that guy. Oh,
yeah. Well, I remember because I finished it and then the ending happened. Like, I finished it, not the true ending, like the normal ending. And then the ending happened and I was like, man, you know, I loved it, but that ending was like unsatisfying.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder if there's like anything else to this game. Like, I wonder if there's like any extra content. And I went online and like one of the first game facts was like, this is the true ending. And I was like, oh, fuck. So I had to go back and like try to do the thing. I don't know that I've ever actually beaten that fucker because he's hard as hell.
Yeah, I got the regular ending. Yeah. And then I just watched the true ending because I didn't want to... I can't remember what it was, but I remember it being like quite a bit of work to like go back to a save. I'm like, I don't want to I don't want to play through the whole thing again. I'm just going to watch it. But yeah, the characters, you definitely... It was like that's the first... I played Persona 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 1. But I think they were a little too... Like, I remember playing... I was into JRPGs. They're just like a little too much for me to like follow. So I had some experience, but I had never done like this social sim where you had to manage like your day, and then you realize like, oh, I can't be best friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And depending on who I'm best friends with, that influences my battle, and like this whole like juggling of your time. Because it's not like a regular RPG where you can completionist, like I'm going to get every best weapon, I'm going to get every best summon, and I'm going to get all the items, and like you can't really do that. You can't max everything out in Persona. And I remember thinking that was almost refreshing in a way because you can't, like the completionist part of your brain that drives you crazy is like, relax, bro, it's not even possible. You can't, it's like, don't worry about it. Just play the game, let it happen, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, it was... I've played Persona 1 and 2, but not on the PlayStation 1. I played the PSP, like, remakes.
Re-release, yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I'm trying to finish them, but they are a lot more esoteric. And I think you're right. It's like... that whole social aspect to it just changes the game completely, because it goes from like focusing on this big narrative that's like, in the case of Persona 1 at least, very complicated and like kind of convoluted and weird, to like focusing on the individual stories of this group of characters that's like all very endearing and like cool people to hang around under the arch of like this big threat that's happening. But yeah, no, that game just makes you fall in love with all those fucking characters.
There's a reason. Yeah, there's a reason it's like a cult classic. If you haven't played it and you like RPGs, I'd probably try it.
Yeah.
What's the first video game you ever remember seeing?
That I remember seeing, if I had to guess, I'm going into my mind palace. I think it was when I was 5. I remember my mom got me a Super Nintendo. My cousins were living with me at the time, and so we tore into it. And I remember playing Super Mario World first, and then playing Aladdin on the Super Nintendo. And so those are the two first games I remember like actually playing. I'm sure I must have seen like some arcade machine or something when I was little, but that's the first time I remember interacting with like a video game controller.
Were you hooked? Like, I know 5's pretty young to go back and dig up memories, but do you remember, was it like an instant, I'm hooked, like I'm into gaming, or was like, it's a fun thing, but it's, because I remember I'm a little bit, what year were you born?
91.
Okay, so yeah, you're a little bit younger. I was born in 85. Normally I try to guess what someone's first console is. I forgot to do that. You already told me it's a Super Nintendo. If you guessed 91, I would have either guessed Genesis or Super Nintendo. So it would have been a 50-50 chance. But was it, because I had Mario on the NES and Duck Hunt, and I liked it. And I had the original Legend of Zelda, which was too hard for a 5-year-old. Games didn't really click. I would say the reason I'm asking, I didn't feel like I became a gamer until the PS1 days. Were you like, I'm all in early, or did it kind of grow on you over time?
You know, whenever I think back on it, I definitely remember, or at least I feel like I remember, that I was really enthralled by the idea of like having control over something. Like when I watch movies and I watch TV shows, I enjoy that, but like being able to hold a controller and like affect what's happening on the screen. Yes. I remember as a kid being like, this is next level shit, like mind expanding, like stuff like that. So I was really fascinated by it, but I wouldn't say like I wasn't like, oh, this is all that I want now. Like I wasn't obsessed, or I wasn't like actively seeking out stuff like that at the time. I think that more so happened when I got a little bit older, like maybe 9 or 10. I remember having like this neighbor kid that I went to his house, and he was playing Ocarina of Time, and at the time I'd never seen a Nintendo 64, and I saw that and I was like, holy shit, like I'm over here, you know, I'm in fucking 20,000 AD and you're in fucking 8,000, like 20,000 BC, and you're in the future. Like it was crazy. And that was more the time when I was like, damn, like I really do want to like explore this and take this a lot more seriously. That's when I started playing more. That's why I started like being interested in acquiring more games. And then the PS1 for me as well was like the first console I owned that I was like, this is a console I want to like explore and build a library of games around and, you know, sort of go at it that way.
What's the first game you remember getting obsessed, like getting sucked into completely? What's the first game you say that got you?
Yeah. Thinking back on it, it was probably Legend of Dragoon on the PS1.
Woo! Great pull!
That's
you're the first person to bring that game up.
That's my favorite game of all time. I remember going to Toys R Us with my mom. We had like a summer apartment, or like a little beach place, and we went, and I took my PS1 with me everywhere I went, because I didn't have the original like fat PlayStation. I had the tiny PS1 like
with the screen that popped up.
I didn't have the screen, but I had that model.
The slim. The PS1 Slim.
And so I would take it with me everywhere because it's so portable. And I was bugging my mom, and she took me down to Toys R Us, and I was walking down the aisle, and I saw 2 games. I was like, I saw Final Fantasy Tactics, and I saw Legend of Dragoon. And I was like, I want one of these.
Both are in my top 5, so can't go wrong.
And my mom was like, I think I want this one. And my mom was like, well, this one's rated teen. Like, do you think? Because I was like, I must have been like 8, 9,
Yeah.
something like that. Are you sure? Like, maybe you should look at some other ones. And I was like, no, I really, like, I want this one, like, really badly. Like, can I get it? And so we got it. And it was just, like, the art on the cover of it.
Yeah.
Like, immediately I was like, holy fuck.
But
Like,
did you
this looks
know
cool.
it was a JRPG and you
No.
were already into RPGs? Oh,
I had
you
never heard of this game. This was the first JRPG I ever played.
Really?
Yes.
So at 8 or 9 years old, you jump into Legend of Dragoon, which is a pretty beefy JRPG.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was the cover. It was truly that, like, child moment of, like, this one has the cool stuff on it. Like, I want
Bro,
this
that
one.
opening cinematic probably blew your brain.
I'd never seen anything like it. Like, the
Yeah.
opening cinematic, the music, like, at the time, I was like, game graphics will never get better than, what every kid thinks
Yes.
of whatever system they're playing as a kid. And, like, the more I got into it, the more I was like, I made the right decision.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with the game, it came out, I believe, pretty late in the PS1 life cycle, which makes sense because you were rocking the Slim.
Yeah.
And it was like Sony's sort of next Final Fantasy VII. I believe it was, I forgot the company that developed it, but I want to say it was like an official Sony game. Like,
I think it was Sony
funded.
Interactive Japan or something.
And back in those days, a lot of these 32-bit era PlayStation 1 JRPGs would have early computer graphics, like cutscenes, and then like a totally different graphical style when you're playing the game. And a big motivating factor for me was like getting to the next cutscene. I want to see what the next cutscene looks like. A lot of them would open up with these super awesome CG animations. In Legend of Dragoon, I had already played a lot of JRPGs that was like towards the end. It was like the capstone of some of the last JR, and it was easily one of my favorite. And I've always wanted there to be a sequel or some sort of legitimate remaster.
Still waiting.
Speaking of mods, I guess you don't have a PC, but if you've heard of NVIDIA and some other companies have these AI upscaling neural network algorithms, where they feed them a bunch of like similar technology as NVIDIA DLSS, where they feed it like the same image at different resolutions, and it starts recognizing patterns. And then what you do is you run in low resolution, like pre-rendered backgrounds. Say for Final Fantasy VII, it's already been done really well.
Mm-hmm.
You can mod the original Final Fantasy VII, and all the backgrounds have been AI upscaled to 4K, and they look really good.
That's awesome.
And there's like one dude who's like chipping away at Legend of the Dragoon. It's just not as popular, so there's but I'm like, whoever, if I could remember your name, I'd shout you out. But whoever you are, I hope you finish your project because I want to replay that game, modded, and like go through that whole thing. Dude, the animations when you transform into the dragoons,
into a dragoon,
like
so
a freaking,
sick.
I was like, Power Rangers are bitches. The dragoons are where it's at.
Yeah, no, the first time I had Dart transform into his dragoon form, I was like, fuck, dude, like my brain melted out the sides of my ears. I was like, this is the peak of my life. Like, it'll never get better than this moment.
You had the choice to skip them. I wouldn't skip them.
I would
because
never.
They were cool to watch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember, it was definitely not the RPG I should have chosen. Like in terms of like something that's beatable for me. I remember getting stuck pretty early on and then leaving it for a while. But it was a game that like throughout, I think, like I said, I must have gotten it somewhere between 9 and 11. That's what I remember. I must have, picked it up. And then throughout that until I was like 18, I was like picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down. I must have restarted that game like 5-6 times, like never beating it until I would get to like disc 3 or disc 4, but something would always happen and it would like, sort of side, like it would take my attention away and then I'd come back and I'd be like, I don't remember anything. So I have to start over again. And then when I was 18, I was in college and I was hanging out with my best friend at the time and I was like, have you ever played Legend of Dragoon? He's like, no, I have no idea what that is. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, he was into video games at the time, but he was like, he was into like Kingdom Hearts and like other JRPGs.
Okay.
And I was like, I think you're really going to like it. Like, we should play it. And he had a PS3 and that could play PS1 games.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm just going to bring it over. We're going to start playing it. And so we started just passing the controller back and forth and going through the whole thing until eventually we beat it. And that was the first time I had ever beaten it was with him.
Nice.
So that's like, it was like a 2-3 month odyssey. Like I would go over to his house and we'd play and then he'd come over to my house and we'd play some more. And it was just such a fucking cool experience, like going through all that and just having somebody to be like going through it with you so you could talk about it in real time. You could be like, shit, like this happened, that happened. Like we would have like conversations about it. Nobody would know what the fuck we were talking about because nobody was playing this game.
Dude, the story in that game I don't remember all the details. I was a little bit older. I was probably 17 or 18 when it came out.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, that's one of the best stories. The ending battle was really cool. Everyone talks about Aerith dying, but I think his name's Alfred, the wind dude.
Yes.
When the wind dude...
Lavitz is the one that died.
Lavitz, yes.
Yes.
When he dies, I was gutted. I was like, damn, dude. Fuck, I liked him.
That was the first time I'd seen somebody die in a video game, like a character like that.
Yeah.
That was like, what the fuck? Like, so many firsts contained in this one game.
Yeah.
Like, I remember buying it, and then when I opened it and I saw it was 4 discs, I was like, what the fuck am I going to do with this? What do I do? Are these 4 different games? Like, what's the deal here? I remember when I got to the end of the first disc the first time, I must have been like 12 or 13 or 14, and it said, like, please insert disc 2. And I was like, how? Like, do I turn my console off and then switch it? And I was like so scared that if I like opened the console while the disc was running, I'd like fuck it up. It's just like it was such a formative experience for me as a gamer, because it had like so many aspects of so many different things that I'd come to really appreciate.
Did you so you end up beating it later with your friends? It's like kind of like a co-op experience.
Yeah.
In between getting Legend of Dragoon for the first time at 9 or 11, what did you play in between that on PlayStation? What do you remember sticking out?
PlayStation was an amalgam. Like, PlayStation was, because it was the first console, I think, that like I was like, okay, this is going to be the gaming console for me. I didn't have any taste, so I was like, I'm going to try everything.
Yeah.
I remember there was a Konami game. I still own it. It's back here somewhere. It's called Big Ol' Bass 2. It was like this fishing game.
I think I had a cover come up in my head. I wonder if it's right.
The thing about it was, as you progressed, you would catch like more and more ridiculous fish. And I remember like one of the last levels, the water is like completely red, and so like you can't see anything, and you're trying to catch this like terror fish, like this giant fish with like fangs and shit. And I was terrified of this game when I was a kid. I was like, oh my god, like,
I found
no way.
There's footage of it. Yeah, like a demon fish and the water's all red. There's like a giant skeleton in the background.
Oh, it's so scary.
That's badass.
Like, as a kid, I was like, fuck this sucks, because I was just like, I'm gonna die. Like, this fish is gonna come and knock my boat over and kill me.
You are definitely the only person who has brought up bass fishing.
Big Ol' Bass, yeah.
Yeah.
But that Tony Hawk was like...
Yeah, that's a big one.
A huge. Tony Hawk 1, Tony Hawk 2. I grew up in this apartment building. There was like a group of us kids, and like I remember a couple of them lived on the same floor as me. One of them lived like a few floors up. The other one lived like more floors up. But we would all get together and like skate and, you know, do like stupid kid shit. And then we'd go to each other's houses and play video games. That's how I played a lot of like video games that I couldn't buy myself. Like, that was the first time I ever saw Metal Gear Solid. Was I watched like a friend of mine play it. The first time I played Conker's Bad Fur Day, like another kid had that. But Tony Hawk was one that we would all get together and play all the time. Like, we would play like the multiplayer modes. We'd play Horse, Trick Attack, Graffiti, like all that shit. We were super, super into it. So that was a big one, Big Ol' Bass. I remember I owned like 10 Pin Alley, I think, was like a bowling game. I was really into bowling for some reason.
Damn, you're pulling out some deep cups. I think I don't call it 10 Pin
Alley. Oh, Dave Mira's BMX. That was another one I remember, because it had...
The Triple X?
No,
BMX?
Not Triple X BMX. It was called Dave Mira's BMX, because it was like right after Tony Hawk's came out. There was like Andy McDonald skateboarding, Dave Mira's BMX, like Matt Hoffman's BMX. But Dave Mira's, I remember, because I was terrible at it. I couldn't play it, but I loved going into the first level, and I would restart the level multiple times because all I wanted was to listen to What I Got by Sublime, which was one of the songs on that soundtrack. So I would go in there and I'd just cruise around and like do tricks in a free ride to Sublime for, 30 minutes or something.
I just found some footage for 10 Pin Alley. I think I saw the cover of this game.
Yeah.
Obviously like Blockbuster or Hollywood or something.
Yeah.
I would have never picked it, but
I remembered another one, and your listeners might know this one. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories.
Ooh.
It was like a 2-day. This is like one that I either lost or I like lent to somebody and I never got it back, and I'm still trying to get it. But it was like an early like Yu-Gi-Oh game, and it was around the time when I was like into Yu-Gi-Oh, and pretty much ever since that game I've been really into. It was that game and the Pokemon trading card game on Game Boy that like made me obsessed with like trading card game video games. Like that's always been like my guilty pleasure sort of game. When I just want to like relax for a little bit, I'll play a trading card video game.
I've never heard of this one either. It's it's just like a grid.
Yep.
It's just a card game. Yeah.
Yep. But it has like this whole story that's like it's set in ancient Egypt and like a whole bunch of stuff that I'm sure is related to the anime in some way, but I wasn't keeping up with it enough to
You just
figure
like the
it
card
out.
game. So are you big into like all the Final Fantasy card games? You play all those?
I haven't, you know what? I haven't played any of them. Like Final Fantasy is a big gap in my JRPG. Like, not, yeah. Like I've played 7. I've never beaten it. I've never played 8. Played a little bit of 9. Played 6, but haven't beaten it. The only ones I've beaten are 15 and 10. 10 was the first one I played, I think.
The 2 I arguably hate the most.
Yeah, I'm not
Actually,
a huge
no.
fan of 10.
15's okay. I like 15.
15 gets a lot of shit, like deservedly so most of the time, but like I just can't hate on a game that's about 3 bros riding around in a convertible. Like
I think the hard part about 15 was being so hyped during the whole marketing process when it was originally versus 13 and all the things that they said it was going to be, then it wasn't.
Yep.
And then like when it finally came, it was like this weirdly paced mixed matched batch of ideas.
Yep.
Parts like I remember playing through it, and sometimes I'd be like, this is hitting all the right buttons and this is the pinnacle, and then an hour later I would be like, this is a slog and I hate this.
I agree.
But I beat it.
And wasn't like part of the story also like they made like some anime movie that like explains the beginning of the story or something?
Yeah, Kingsglaive, which is awesome if you haven't seen it. Some of the best CG I've ever seen in my life.
I remember people being pissed about that.
Yeah, like that was originally supposed to be part of the game, and there's a really good NeoGAF thread that's I'm sure been pinned in sort of archive that you could probably track down that talks through different interviews and what the original scope and the story of the game was.
Okay.
And what ended up happening. And it has a similar thing to Xenogears. I don't know if you remember, once you get to the other continent on the train, the game becomes extremely linear, and it's just like hallway after hallway, cutscene after cutscene. It's because they scrapped what they were originally going for, and they like hodgepodged a bunch of different story elements together and just kind of like wrapped it up. And you don't even really understand who Arden is. Spoiler, he's the bad guy, the main bad guy. But they did put out episode Arden later, the DLC, which I never played. Which
I didn't play any of the DLC either.
Okay, yeah. I will say, after Noctis comes back to life like 15 years later, and then you meet up with the bros and you have that one final camping trip, and he's like, I'm going to die. Like, this is a suicide mission. Like, it's like my fate. Like, I did get a little emotional. Yeah. I was like, okay, even with all the shit, there was enough of emotional impact. I am slightly attached to these characters. Yeah. Yeah, it was that's what I was like, you know, and maybe my like non-attachment to Final Fantasy helps me in this case. Yeah. But I was like, I just wanted like a chill like JRPG experience with like a nice open world, like beautiful graphics and decent combat, and I feel like it delivered on that. So I was like, I had a good time. Like, it gave me what I wanted. Yeah. 10, on the other hand, 10's really good in many ways, but I hate Titus so much. The characters in 10 are very hit and miss. Like, Titus, I can't stand, but Waka, Auron, on the other hand, one of my favorite characters. What I always take away from 10, that I don't know why it's not, like, permanent part of, like, every JRPG, is in the battle system, when they tell you the turn order. Yes. I'm like, every game should have this. Every single JRPG should have this, and like show me how I can affect turn order by like using buffs and debuffs and like play around with that stuff. I thought that was really cool. The sphere grid's also like a pretty fun way of like upgrading characters and stuff, but the story is just like, I kind of bounced off of it. I was really like, I'm here for the cool visuals and the fun battle mechanics, and that's about it. That's about it. I thought some of the concepts of the story were cool, like this cycle of this demon that comes and wipes everyone out, and you have to sacrifice someone, and then it comes every 7 years, and like that was pretty cool. When it ended up being his dad from a different dimension, and he didn't exist, and I didn't quite follow all of that. It was like, okay, I didn't really like him anyway, so I guess I don't care if he disappears. He never existed.
Well, and the music was great as always.
Yeah, To Xanarkand might be my favorite, even though it's one of my least favorite Final Fantasies. It's up there with one of my favorite songs in a Final Fantasy.
It's great.
Yeah, that's an amazing track. What would you say were the PS1 games that, if you had to pick your top 5 PS1 games on the spot for that, and then we'll move on to like the next era after that.
All right, damn. I mean, Legends of Dragoon's number 1 with a bullet. Easy. Tony Hawk's 1 and 2 probably takes the next 2 spots. I'm trying to think of like, because I have to discern between like games I owned and games I played at other people's houses, because there was a lot of like,
it could be something you played at someone else's house.
Yeah, we had our own little economy where it's like, I'll give you this if you give me these 2 things, and like we'll do our thing. I remember, I've never been a huge fan of the series, but I will always remember going to my friend's house near Halloween, wasn't Halloween, at like 7 or 8 p.m. or something, and sitting in a dark room watching him play the beginning of Resident Evil 1. And when he walks down that hallway and that motherfucking dog jumps through that window, I just about shit my pants. I almost ran out of the room. It's like one of the more vivid video game memories I have. I'd probably put Resident Evil up there for that. And Metal Gear Solid was one that like I never touched the controller, and to this day I've tried playing it. The mechanics just aren't like, I'm just not good at it, but I dig what it's doing. Like, that's a game that I want to like hire someone to come to my house and play for me and have me sit next to them and be like, experience it without having to do the minutia of the stealth and all that stuff. But I remember watching a friend of mine play through it and me being like, this is fucking cool, man. Like just those little things were so fun.
That game is one I can totally see where you could just watch. And one of the first games that I think someone could sit down and watch as a spectator and just be entertained the whole time. It's
so cinematic. Like everything about it is like so stylized, and it plays into what it wants to do, and it adds like those little touches, like being able to knock on walls to like alert people to where you want them to go. And like, I think you could you not like smoke a cigarette to like reveal lasers and stuff like that? Like that stuff, I was like,
you have to smoke a cigarette in a couple places as a part of the story mechanic to progress as well. It was that brings up, I've been preparing for like a new series to launch on my YouTube channel, which is nothing right now, just some episodes. But I love going back and modding old games and getting them to run in 4K. And that's one of them. There's a really good PS1 emulator called Beetle, the hardware accelerated Beetle, and you can use a thing called PGXP, which is stands for Precision Geometry Pipeline something. But awesome. What it does is it fixes the texture warble and like the texture seams that were on PS1, and then you can run the game in like native 4K with some like there's a texture up-resing algorithm called XBZ, which is pretty good. Anyway, I deep down the rabbit hole on this shit.
That's so sick though, because the PS1 specifically, the Nintendo 64 also has this problem, and I feel like people give it a little bit too much credit. But like the PS1, because it was in that, like I've always been so impressed when like we jump from one generation to another, just like the improvements of graphics and things like that, and like it gets less and less impactful as the generations go on, and as you grow up, I feel like as a kid it's just like everything's more amazing. Yeah. But the Super Nintendo to PS1 jump, because the Super Nintendo is the peak of 16-bit like by the end of that system's life, like developers were doing like such insane and amazing like pixel art, and then the PS1 and N64 come out and it's all these jagged chunky polygons that like definitely have their charm. But when I try to go back and play some of those games, I'm like, oh man, like
it's not the same.
Yeah, so like
what I've been doing is I don't think I'm going to make a new channel, but I have like a playlist called Old Games in 4K, something along the lines of that, and go use all these awesome. I played through Mega Man Legends 2, like and have all the footage.
Oh, that's sick.
And Metal Gear Solid is one of them. The problem is like I like to make clips of me like talking shit. I like to get drunk, play games, talk shit, put them into clips to promote the podcast. But I don't want to upload those playthroughs as like a YouTube playthrough. Like that should have no one on top. That's just, you're there to see the game in like 4K with all the cool mods on it, and you want to and I want to play through like Metal Gear all the way through. I started it with Symphony of the Night as well, but every time I die, edit it out so I can, as a watcher, you can sit down and watch the whole game be played through without any hiccups. Yeah, so I just edited all like the successful attempts together, but it's in full 4K with all the mods, and so you don't have to play it. You can just sit back and have the experience. The best way to experience it now as a modern day person, especially if the mechanics get in your way.
Yeah.
And I finally figured out how to record with a different program my webcam and audio separate from so I can get 2 for 1. I can get drunk, play the game, talk shit, and do double dip. And
then just upload the one file for the gameplay up to the YouTube. Yeah, that's perfect.
That's one of them. Metal Gear Solid 1 with all the bells and whistles with modern emulation.
Yeah.
Is awesome. What I agree with you with the 16-bit, though. I don't like, actually, when I play games that are 16-bit and older that are more pixel-based, I don't use any sort of the filters or up-resing stuff. Yeah. I actually like, there's a filter called Nearest you can use on a lot of different emulators, but because pixels are square and perfect, it can upscale to 4K really easy because it can read. But it just keeps the pixels, it just makes the pixels bigger.
Oh, gotcha.
And really sharp. And I think pixel art, like NES, Super Nintendo Genesis game, in 4K, just raw pixels, look really good. Yeah. Like the style works. And so when I do those ones, I do like naked. I do no filters, no nothing.
Yeah. No, they really like, I guess it's just because they were working on them for so long. They really like squeezed all the juice out of that stuff by the end of that system's life. And it's the reason why like I see people on Instagram like using just like straight up Super Nintendos on like PVMs with like some SCART cabling or something, and it looks gorgeous.
Nice. Yeah.
Like it looks great.
The Legend of Dragoon though is like the tail end of the PS1, and if you compare Legend of Dragoon graphics to really almost any PS1 game, that might be the pinnacle of PS. What's one of them? Metal Gear Solid. Yep. Legend of Dragoon. What else would be up there for best graphics on PS1? I'm drawing a blank.
I don't know. I haven't played through a lot of the game, but I remember like Final Fantasy IX, specifically the like actual cuts, because Square's always been great at like doing the cutscenes, and those were ones that I was like, holy crap, like these look really, really nice. I remember thinking that about Final Fantasy X too when I saw it, just being like, wow, these cutscenes are amazing, and then they cut back to the regular gameplay. I'm like, this isn't as good as what I was just looking at.
Oh yeah, Vagrant Story. I recorded the intro of Vagrant Story in 4K. That's awesome.
I'd never played that game, but I had wanted it for the longest time because again, like it looked cool as shit, and I recently got it, and I have to start playing it.
The mechanics on that one are very different.
That's what I have like 2 people that like that I know that are like, one of them's like, I loved it, like I played it when it came out and it was great, and the other person's like, I tried to play it recently, I fucking hated it. Like if you don't play it like exactly this specific way, like you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, the battle system is sort of similar. The only game that came out that has a similar battle system unironically came out around a similar time, which is Parasite Eve 1.
Okay.
Where it's
which I played and I loved.
If you like Parasite Eve 1, you might like the battle system of Vagrant Story. It's not a one-for-one similarity, but there are some overlaps in the sense of your main character in Vagrant Story has like a sphere around him where you can, if an enemy's within that sphere, you can attack.
You can attack them.
But like when you hit the attack button, then you choose between like head, left arm, torso.
Oh,
they have like different percentages, and like depending. But if you hit the right arm and you know they're going to use a right arm attack, and you know you can hit the right arm for enough HP that it breaks their right arm, then you can interrupt their next attack.
Oh, that's sick.
And not get hit. So it's like learning the enemies and what their attack patterns are and where their weaknesses are. And then at the same time, it's a dungeon crawler. Like it's not a JRPG with like cities. You just basically go down deeper into a dungeon, deeper and deeper.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That sounds sick though. Like, and the art style for that game has always like intrigued me. immensely.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did you ever see Fear Effect 1 and 2? It's like a cel-shaded PS1 game.
I have Fear Effect 1. I've never played it.
I haven't played them either, but I always thought they looked...
But they look, I got it because I saw the thing and I was like, oh, this looks crazy. And I bought it and I put it on a shelf and...
Yeah.
I haven't touched it
I remember
since.
seeing like the cover of... I think both of them have like a hot chick with cleavage, cel-shaded graphics. I'm like, ooh, okay, that caught my... You have my attention? But I never
That was
played
the
them
move
either.
back then. They would
That was the move. It
They
still
would
is
do
the
that a
move.
lot.
It's always...
Yeah, it's always
probably,
been the
I mean,
move.
you look at Twitch...
I think the difference now is that all the game covers have like anime girls when they do that now. It's never like the sort of more realistic looking female characters.
Yeah, if like the blatantly sexualized video game stuff is also very anime. Like those two styles come together, which is weird. I've gotten sick of growing up. I remember anime was like a rarity.
Yeah.
I remember when there was Dragon Ball Z was on Sunday mornings at like 5 a.m. for a while when I was a kid. And that's all you could get. And I remember renting like Ninja Scroll and Akira.
Yep.
And that's all you could get. And now I'm like the opposite. Like I'm so rinsed on anime. Like I'm actually just... And that's one of the things I don't like about JRPGs now. It's like if it's anime, I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's just been overdone, I guess. I don't know if other people feel... I'll watch... If someone tells me like this anime has a really cool premise.
Yeah.
'Cause sometimes animes have the coolest ideas.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll put up with like the weeby shit to get through like the really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But I wish they did that more. I wish you could combine some of this. I'm trying to... I guess there's Japanese games that are like Bloodborne is not anime at all.
Yeah.
And that's so I guess it is not always that way. But the sex shit and anime go hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly.
There is I'm sort of the same way where like when I was growing up I had a friend who was super into anime and so I would just watch whatever he had. Like I was like, oh, let me borrow this and I'd just watch anything. And now because of like Crunchyroll and Netflix and all these other there's so much to pick from that I'm like I need somebody like I'm not going to pick something myself unless I know that it looks like something I'm going to like. Everything else, I'm like, please just recommend me something because I can't afford to watch like 14 episodes of an anime to then be like, this isn't good. Yeah. Like I don't want to watch this anymore.
Everyone's talking about Demon Slayer. There's like a movie out.
Yes, I haven't seen it yet. I want to watch it just because it's so like the big thing right now.
Yeah.
And I've heard the animation on it is like next level amazing. But I started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure recently because a friend of mine was like, you have to watch it. It's so ridiculous.
That's a legendary one from what I understand. Yeah.
Yep. So I started watching it. It's incredibly ridiculous, but it's very fun. It's a very fun watch. But I need to go back and watch the classics because I got into anime like I was sort of spoiled in that like I didn't have to try very hard. Like Toonami was around when I was a kid, so I watched like Rurouni Kenshin, Yu Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball Z, like all those, and it was just like a block. Like I would come home after school and it'd be like, let's watch Gundam Wing. You know, but I missed out on a lot of like I've watched Akira, but I haven't seen like Doom Megalopolis, like MD Geist, like Cyber City Oedo, like you know, like all the big ones that everybody's like, you gotta like this is the one I rented from the sketchy video shop like down the street.
Yeah, I saw Megalopolis really early, and I need to rewatch it because I was pretty young. I just remember thinking like the animation was cool, the story was decent, but I'm really confused and I don't get what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like I wasn't old enough to understand like the analogies and the symbolism and all that stuff.
Yeah. I'll never forget too, I was at a local Blockbuster, and I'm sure this happens all over the place, but I remember being like, must have been like 15, 16 or something, and being in like the kids section for some reason and looking around and finding like anime in that section, and like a lot of it was definitely like not like Ninja Scroll and like hentai and stuff like that. And I was like, who the fuck like organized this?
I had an interesting experience specifically with Ninja Scroll. That was not the first anime. I think I'd seen... That might have been the first anime. But I remember seeing the cover, again, in the cartoon section.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this looks dope. It's ninjas and like swords. And my dad rented it for me. And I grew up in an extremely religious household, like borderline cult. Like, I don't... Some of my friends and family are still in listening to this. Look, It's a cult. No disrespect. I grew up Mormon, and
gotcha.
my dad was like hardcore, and like anything sexual is like in Mormon theology. There's like murder, and then sexual shit is like right below murder. It's a big no in terms of like seriousness.
Okay.
And I had no idea about Ninja Scroll. I get home, I'm watching it. For those who haven't seen it, early in the movie, there's a rock demon guy that rips the top off a girl, starts sucking on her boobs.
Yep.
Yeah, but she's actually the king's bodyguard, and she's been poisoning herself her whole life to make herself immune to poison. And she drinks everything the king eats. She drinks and tastes first to make sure it's not poisonous. Well, the rock demon doesn't know that. He starts sucking on her titties. And then he starts to die because he gets poisoned. Anyway, my friend of the family comes downstairs, like right in that scene.
Of course.
And is like, "What in the?" They wouldn't have said, "What the fuck?" There's, what is going on? And they tell my dad, and my dad thought that I knew, like I had deceived him.
He thought like you tricked him.
I got my ass beat. Like, no, and I was like, "Dad, I swear I didn't know." He's like, "Bullshit, you're full of shit." I'm like, it was in the kids section.
Yeah,
it looked
I could
cool.
Absolutely see that happening to so many children, where they're like, "Oh, this looks cool." Like, why would you think otherwise?
Yeah. It was. I still loved the movie, and I definitely like got a hold of it and finished it somewhere else at a friend's house or something. Yeah, because I was like, "That's the fucking coolest cartoon I've ever seen." I gotta watch
this now.
yeah. Like, and when the demon dies, he like starts falling apart in pieces, and it's super bloody.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I had never seen I didn't know cartoons could be so cool.
You definitely had good taste as a child.
Yeah, and it was the boobs part was cool too. I was like young, I was down with that. But that's what I meant. Like in the beginning, anime like blew my mind, and then it's been this weird transition where I don't like it anymore for the most part. I'm very picky, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just like a lot of stuff like this when it becomes like more mainstream and there's like more, which is good. I mean, it's nice that it's seeing like so much popularity and people have like so much to choose from now. But I think that thing sort of always happens where the more popular sort of trends start taking over and people start sort of imitating and falling into certain lanes, and things I think get toned down a little bit because you're trying to appeal more. So you have to like search a little harder to find like the people who are doing like the stranger, more unique sort of experiences, whereas before it was like everybody was just doing crazy shit because there was like not that many people that were into it and they could get away with whatever they wanted because nobody's paying attention.
Yep, exactly. During the PS1 time, did you get a hold of any Saturn games, PC games, 64? Were you exposed to any of that?
No, I owned a 64, but I was like I didn't know the Sega Saturn existed until I was much older and like I started learning about video game history. I just never had friends who had Saturns or anything like that. I had a friend who had a Dreamcast, and that was one that I like definitely knew about. And that was like the era where I became like the PS2, Xbox, Dreamcast, GameCube era was the era where I like became like definitely more aware as far as like
gaming in general.
Yes, of like actively going out and searching gaming news and trying to learn things, like trying to see what games were coming out and when they were coming out and how to get them and pre-ordering and doing all that stuff.
So the next generation, kind of modern PS2, like you said, did you end up getting all the consoles, or did you have one console? What happened after that?
So I got a PS2. I was like, PS2, that's my jam, and I stuck with it almost to the end of that generation. But I ended up going to a friend of my mom's house, and he had an Xbox, and so I was like, oh, let me try some of these Xbox games. I've never played an Xbox before, and I ended up playing Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And I fell in love. I immediately was like, I need to get an Xbox like right now. So I went to GameStop. I traded in a bunch of stuff. Probably got like $30, and my mom was like, I'll help you pay for it. Like,
yeah.
I was like, no, I just bought this stuff like 2 months ago. It's definitely going to be worth like $50.
That's how they get you. So Knights of the Old Republic got you to buy the console.
Yeah. Just by itself, I was like, I can't not play this because I played like a chunk of it, but I knew I couldn't save and I wasn't going to go back. And so I was like, I've got to play this game. So I played it. I beat it. It's probably the game I've beaten the most in my life. I've probably beaten it like 4 or 5 times. And then I got the sequel and I beat that like 2 or 3 times as well. Not as good, but still good enough that I was like, I'm going to play this thing multiple times.
PS2? Anything that stands out to you on PS2 is like...
So PS2 PS2 was, there was a lot more going on with me in the PS2. Persona 4 obviously being like a later thing that I played. I remember at my mom's friend's house, he also had a PS2 for his kids. And I remember playing like the weirdest games. Like I played Mr. Mosquito there.
That is a super weird game.
And Mr. Mosquito,
Sorry to cut you off. I just sometimes I forget. Go. Sometimes I forget that a lot of people just won't know what that stuff is when I bring it up. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but you just play as, I forgot what the point of that game is. It's like to survive a bunch of different scenarios. But there's like a girl in the underwear and you like fly around
so literally the whole story is basically like surrounds, I think it's the Yamada family, and it's like their summer and you're this mosquito, and every level you're tasked to like suck a certain amount of blood out of whichever member of the family's level it is, but you have to like target certain areas of their bodies. And so honestly, the story of the game is just how a mosquito ruins this family's like entire life, because as it progresses, like they get more and more upset with each other that you exist and haven't been murdered, and like they just start losing their minds gradually. I remember the famous level is like I think the third or fourth level where you're the daughter of the family whose age is not disclosed for, I'm assuming, obvious reasons. Is taking a bath, and so you have to like land on her boob or like the top of her chest to suck blood out of, and that was the one that everybody was like, oh
no.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
if the girl's underage, then that's kind of
they never say, and I think it's one of those things where it's like you just assume that she's 18. I mean, like
you have to. But Japan's weird about that. Like there was a game, I'll admit it, that got all this like crazy bad press. And I thought, like, this can't be real. And I found it's called Rayplay.
Oh, no.
And it's like...
I've never heard of this.
It's a real game. It's like... It's a Japanese-only, like, PC game. You can find a way to download it. And you actually can't have sex with women, but, like, it's a harassment simulator.
Oh, no.
Like, you harass women on the subway. I will admit I played it for about 30 minutes. So I'm like, it's real. It's also, like, really hard. I couldn't even figure out... Because it's like a point and click.
You can't harass successfully.
Well,
I think that's a good thing that you weren't good at it.
But I couldn't even get to the harassment point because it's almost like, did you ever play Myst? It's like a point and click puzzle game. So every level is like you have to like go through some puzzles, and then you get to the end of the level and there's a situation where there's a hot girl and you can harass her. And I couldn't get to like, it was like hard.
To the actual part.
I don't want to do all the work. So then I just like Googled it and watched some footage. I'm like, it's real. Like this is the game I'm playing. This is what happens. This is fucking crazy. I can't believe it's a real game.
Yeah.
Japan has always been, they make the best games, but they've always had this like weird subculture, which is why we were saying anime and hentai and sex games. It's weird.
You got to take the good with the bad. Like, there's always going to be stuff like that. And, some people like make it work. Like, I think there have been examples of like incorporating uncomfortable situations into like game stories that like, just like any other medium, right? Like if you do it correctly, you can talk about some of these things. It can
be a good thing. Yes.
It's just like if you miss the mark on it, it's just bad.
It's a nuclear train wreck.
Yeah. And with games like we said, because you're in control of it, if it's bad, it's like even worse because then you're forcing the person to do it.
You're culpable. Yeah. Did you ever play Last of Us 2?
I haven't played the second one. I played the first one, but not the second one.
That's a game where I thought a lot of people boycotted that game. It was weird. That game came out in the middle of like the peak of like Trump, Biden, left-right hate. And like the conservative world decided that Last of Us 2 was nothing but like communist propaganda because there was a lesbian and a trans character in it.
Yep.
And I don't really like, and I remember I have felt like definitely parts of the media have been heavy-handed, like, okay, I get it. And so I was like, okay, but I love the first game. I'm going to play it and I'll just, if it gets heavy-handed and annoying, I can deal with it. I'll just, And I kept waiting. Like, when is this like super social justice warrior stuff that everyone's freaking out about? Because there were people in like different Instagram groups that were like, I'll never play that game. I don't support it, blah, blah, blah. That's like, and I'm like, have you actually played it? Because I beat it and I don't, like, the trans character is not even explicitly trans, and they actually handle it really well. The situation is, it's a side character. I don't think it'll spoil it. You should play it, by the way.
Yeah.
The trans character is part of like a cult, a religious cult that's like survived in this like post-apocalyptic world.
Okay.
and she wants to be a warrior, or he, I can't remember exactly if it's a he or she, and they can't because they're the wrong gender, and so they pretend, they shave their head and dress like the other gender to try to become a warrior, and they get kicked out of the tribe. And it's never, I don't remember it's ever explicitly said, like they dress like the other gender as a way to become a warrior, or they actually are. I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
If they did explicitly say it either way, it was like very subtle, and I missed it. It was definitely not heavy-handed by any stretch of the means.
I haven't played it, so obviously I don't know. But that sounds like a story that's been done. Like, that sounds like Mulan to me. You know, like that sounds like nothing that like we haven't. You know, nothing that would enrage people to that level. Yeah. I think it's just, I think people get caught up in the hype one way or the other. Like, it's a big reason why I try to avoid like trailers and like spoilers for things, and like I try not to get like overly excited about anything, even if it's something I really like, because I feel like even if what I end up getting is good, I feel like me building it up in my own head, whether for good or for bad, ends up dulling the experience one way or the other. And then I feel like I don't get like the fullness of what the experience would have been if I had just gone into it like blind, or as close to blind as you can in this day and age.
What's the most, speaking of hype, what game were you the most hyped for that maybe you couldn't help yourself from getting hyped for?
Damn. Like, it's hard because I actively try to avoid it, but I do. The one that sticks out in my mind when you say that is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Ooh.
Because I remember I was in like middle or early high school, and everybody was just like, people who played games, people who didn't play games, like everybody was just like, GTA San Andreas is coming out. Like,
it's coming.
This is it. Have you seen the map? Have you seen how big the map is? Like, you can do all these things. You can get haircuts, and you can become buff, and you can get fat if you eat too many burgers. And I was just like, this is sick. And then I got it. Like, I got it on release, I think, and I was like, oh, fuck, it was worth it. Like, this is it.
Did it live up? Did it live up?
In my child mind, absolutely. Like, but I was primed for that game because I loved Vice City, and this was going to be like bigger, badder. Like, I was starting to get it, like I was starting to develop like my own musical taste, and Tony Hawk was like a part of that. Like, I remember picking up a lot of stuff from like those soundtracks as far as like hip hop, rock, punk, that sort of stuff. And like, I knew that like Vice City had like an amazing soundtrack, and I was very much looking forward to like what they were going to put in San Andreas. Like, I loved riding around, just listening to the radio in both those games, and just like tuning into different stations and seeing like what is on here that like I haven't heard, and then I'd go and download it on LimeWire and give myself malware or something.
LimeWire. What was the other one? Napster.
I miss Napster. LimeWire was the big one for us. Like, LimeWire was the one that people were like, you have to like get this. And I remember one day I went on it, and there was just like this big FBI like thing on it that was like, this site has been shut down or whatever.
And you thought they were gonna come get you?
Yes, absolutely. I was like, oh God,
I'm going to jail.
I thought they were gonna like flashbang my room any second.
The SWAT team comes in, shoot your dog. Yeah. What game's been the most disappointing for you?
Oh, you're really pulling it out of me, because like I always like, as soon as you say it, something comes to my mind immediately, and it was Final Fantasy Dirge of Cerberus.
That is a disappointing game.
That was another game. That was another game that I was extremely hype about, and I remember like me and my friend, me and one of my best friends at the time, we were both super hyped for it. Like, he was much more into Final Fantasy. Like, he's the one that showed me Final Fantasy X. He had watched like Advent Children and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm super hyped for this. Like, we both thought Vincent was like the shit because he's like a vampire.
He's the coolest character in that game, and I was saying, I always like the dark anti-heroes. I gravitate towards those guys, and so I was let down in Dirge of Cerberus too.
Fuck, I gotta get this. And then we got it, and I remember we were on the phone when we got it because we couldn't play together, but we were on the phone. I was like, all right, I'm at this level, and he's like, oh, I'm at the second level now, and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm right behind you, blah blah. And we played it for a bit, and then I like, at first when I was playing it, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, blah blah. But then like towards the end, I was like, oh, this story isn't like that fun. Like, I'm getting this is kind of boring. And then what really killed it for me, which I like back then was a complaint. Now I'd be like ecstatic. Was that like I think I finished it within like 8 hours or something. Like it wasn't a very long game. And as a kid, I was like, fuck, like I just paid like $60 for this. And
I wanted 60 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, I'd be like, please be like 4 hours long. Like I don't have time for this.
Yep.
But yeah, that was one that like I got at release and like super excited to play. I still own it for some reason. I was just like, I started off like very hype and like it just slowly over time like teetered off. And I was like, by the end of it, I was like, I shouldn't have gotten this. Like I should have gone to my friend's house and played it there. Like it wasn't worth it.
That makes sense. It's almost unanimous. What's that word? Unanimously. Sometimes I cannot speak English. Pardon me. Unanimously regarded as a disappointment amongst like Final Fantasy heads. I mean, there's always like a small group of people that think what everyone else hates is awesome. Yeah. But for the most part, I would agree with you. Like, the game just. I played it. I didn't buy it. I was stoked for it, but because of the pre-release stuff, I wanted like another RPG with Vincent. And when I saw that it was like an action shooter game, I ended up waiting and played it at a friend's house or a demo somewhere, and it was just like, not for me.
I think, not for me. Because I think that came out after Devil May Cry. I think me and my friend were like, oh, maybe it's like Devil May Cry, and it'll be super like fast-paced and cool, and like, you know.
Which Devil May Cry is badass. I love all
but
those,
this was like not even close.
Yeah. I actually liked Devil May Cry 2. People hated that game. I liked it. It was like the one that everyone hates in the series. Yeah. But I beat it. I thought it was okay.
Yeah. I don't have a huge, like, I don't have a lot. I played the first 2 games, but I was never like very good at it. Like I don't think I beat either of them. I loved Dante as a character, and I loved like how stylish the combat was, but it just like it never clicked for me. And I don't know why, but like when Bayonetta came out, I was like, oh, I want to try this because it seemed like similar, in that same sort of lane. And again, I was just like, I could progress, but I was never like, I don't feel cool. Like, I feel like a lot of that game is like, you're supposed to feel real badass, like doing all these mega combos. And I was just like, I just feel like I kind of can't pull those off ever.
So for the PS2 era, what would you say a handful of games that your top picks for the PS2? This era.
Ooh, see, this is much bigger.
Actually, Knights of the Old Republic would be one of them because you bought an Xbox for it.
Yep. So Persona 4, Knights of the Old Republic. There's this weird game that people don't talk about very much, but maybe you know it, called Ring of Red. It's like a mech turn-based strategy game on PS2. I played it randomly like years back, and then I recently managed to get a copy of it like randomly. I found it and I bought it, and I got to the last level, and it's one of those games where like the last boss is like fuck you hard, as opposed to like the rest of the game.
So this is like a tactics type, like this looks cool.
It's like turn-based, but then you have like your mech, and so when you attack it, like depending on what you do, like if you shoot, it'll switch to like a scope that like you have to like aim, and it'll move around, but the longer you wait, the more steady your shot gets and the higher percentage you have of hitting. But all the enemies are on a timer. So like when you're on the battle screen, if you wait too long, the enemy can shoot you first. And if they hit you, they like fuck up your aim and you have to wait again to get a nice target. So you have to like strategize how long is it worth to wait versus just trying to take a shot and see if you can hit. And like it's one of those games where like if you hit their legs, then they can't move as well. If you hit their like weapons, then like they can't use this weapon. And it does a bunch of cool stuff, but it's a really weird game. I don't know how expensive it is anymore, but it wasn't that expensive like a couple years ago when I got it. So
I've never heard of this. Like you pulled out a couple things. You pulled out the Nomad, which blew my mind. I'm normally pretty into mecha shit. I feel like I know most mech stuff, at least anything that was released in North America. The mech world and Japanese releases goes pretty deep. Yeah. I've never heard of this. This looks cool.
Yeah, so there's those 3. Tony Hawk's Underground was also big, but I said Tony Hawk's before. GTA San Andreas. Simpsons Hit and Run, actually, was another one that I really, really liked as a kid. My PS2. GTA clone, but like the best GTA clone I think they've made so far. Like, just a really cool concept and like very well executed. Recently I played the Ratchet and Clank games, which I had played as a kid but never beat, and now I've beaten like 3 or 4 of them, and those are always fun. So, you know, that's sort of like the kind of stuff I was playing during that time that I was really enjoying.
Modern, like this kind of, we kind of push into PS3 and modern stuff, I guess we could lump together. What's been the big hitters for you for more modern games?
If we're talking PS3, Xbox 360, like I was an Xbox 360 kid. This was the first gen where I owned all three consoles.
You switched. Oh, you didn't switch. You got all three of them. Okay.
Well, I got the Xbox 360 first because my friends were all getting Halo, and we had played Halo 2 a bunch. Like, we dragged TVs over to each other's houses and make, like, makeshift blinders so you couldn't fucking screen cheat. So we played Halo 2 a lot, so I had to get Halo 3 on launch because we were going to play it. And then I got Elder Scrolls, which I'd never played an Elder Scrolls game before. So that was sort of my introduction to, like, Western-style RPGs. Like, Knights of the Old Republic I'd played before that, but I feel like the BioWare stuff is a little more stylized than, like, and a little more streamlined than something like the Elder Scrolls feels like very classic Western RPG.
Is, more core, like tabletop RPG inspired. Yeah.
Like Dungeons and Dragons type stuff. And I really loved that. And then I got a PS3 a little bit later. And for that, I mean, I really liked Infamous. Like, that was a couple games I played on there that I was super into. Assassin's Creed, obviously, was super huge. One that people don't... I know people know it, but they don't talk about as much is Biohazard. Is it Biohazard? No, it's called... What's that game where you're like a superhero? It's like...
Oh, and it's like you have claws and shit?
Yes. It's kind of like Infamous, but it was on... Prototype. That's what it is. Prototype. So Prototype I loved. The original Prototype, I was like all about it. Because I was on Xbox 360, the JRPGs were not coming fat, like hot and heavy as they used to when I was on the PS2. But I did play Lost Odyssey. That was like the big Xbox 360 exclusive sort of thing. I played Final Fantasy 13. So I got like a couple of them. I got like Soul Calibur 5. Like, me and my friends were into playing some of those fighting games, so I had the Xbox 360 version. My friend had the PS3 version, because you had to get the exclusive characters. If you got the 360, it was Yoda, and if you got the PS3 one, it was Darth Vader, I think. But yeah, those were like a lot of the big games I was playing during that gen.
What games made you the most emotional?
Oh man, like Persona 4 is always up there, just because like I don't think I've ever cried at a game, but that's the closest I've come when those credits finally rolled. I was like, fuck, man. Legend of Dragoon, when Lavitz died, like like that's my Aerith moment. Like that is for me the equivalent of that. There's just something like when you get a good JRPG, I think that the amount of time it takes to like get through it, you just end up more invested by the end of it. Because when you're 70 hours into a game, like, if you've made it this far, you've gotta like something about it. That's like something with these characters or the story has gotta be connecting with you. So those are usually the ones that make me the most emotional. I remember playing Knights of the Old Republic. Have you played it?
Yes, I haven't beaten it, but I've played it.
Okay. So this might be a spoiler alert. But
it's a like 20-year-old game. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, in the first one, you play as this character, and then all you do as you go through the game is you hear about Darth Malak, who's like the big bad, and how he had a partner whose name was Darth Revan, but Revan disappeared like I don't know how many years ago, and nobody's heard from him since. And then towards the end of the game, it's revealed that you are Darth Revan. You've been Darth Revan the entire time.
Oh.
Your ship got like hit with some blaster fire. You ended up like, I think, crash landing or something. Or no, I think it was that you were in some sort of battle and you lost your memories. Like you were knocked out, and Malak... Oh, no. Sorry. Fuck this. Malak betrays you. That's what happens. Malak betrays you and tries to kill you, but...
You survive.
You survive, but you lose your memories. You're rescued by the Jedi, and they try to like train you back up as a Jedi because they want you. They know you have like incredible Force powers, but they want you to like be on their side.
Do they know you're Brevin, whatever the guy?
Yes.
The other Jedis?
Yes, the top, like the council, I think, does. And this one girl who's like Bastila, I think is her name, who's like sent to like escort you. Like she's like one of your party members from like very early in the game. And then eventually it's revealed that you are Revan. And that was like mine. Like at the time I was like, what? Like I did not suspect at all. Didn't like, it really blew my mind at the time when I was doing that.
What are the other guys on Regions Free? people are interested, like what kind of, we have a really good idea what sort of games you've been into, but give people sort of a rundown of what the other hosts are into, what they can expect.
I hate to speak for any of them because I feel like they're going to be like, you fucked it up, you got it wrong.
They're probably not even going to listen, so don't worry about it. Let's just talk major shit on them.
Exactly. Well, they all suck, and I'm the best, so. Paul is, I feel like Paul and me have like a sort of connection because we're both like into very weird sort of esoteric type stuff. He's very big into RPGs, a lot of like obscure Japanese stuff. Like he's big into Etrian Odyssey, if you've ever heard of that franchise.
I've seen the logo. I'm not very familiar
it's
with
like
it
a
at
dungeon crawlery type game where you like draw your own maps and stuff like that. He also likes like Super Robot Wars, which is like a Japanese series of games that just brings together mecha from like a bunch of like really famous anime series and like lets you use them to fight in like turn-based combat. And then Anthony, he's like, one of the things that makes our show like interesting, at least to me in terms of the conversation, is that we're all very different. Like we're all different ages, grew up in different places. Our experiences are like wildly different. So Anthony is originally he's born and raised in New York, much older than me. So he was like around for like the Atari, ColecoVision, television, NES stuff. So he likes a lot of the NES stuff, crazy collection, like a bunch of like stuff that I will never own. But he's really into like almost anything. I feel like his heart really, really comes out when he's playing either sports games or fighting games. Like those are the ones where I feel like his like emotions come out. So big fan of like we did a sports games episode where it was like weird sports games. So we were talking NBA Jam, NFL, like Blitz the League, you know, like FIFA Street, like, you know.
I have one for him.
Yeah.
That you can pass on, or maybe if he listens to this.
Yeah.
It's Newman Athletics.
Oh, I've never heard of that. What is that?
Yeah, it's super obscure. The only place I ever saw it was one random nickelcade.
Okay.
Like in a city that was like 2 cities away from my house. I used to play it all the time. It's very anime. Like you play as, it's a superhuman. It's like if superheroes had like a strongman competition.
Oh, that sounds cool.
It's like there's like 5 different characters that have all superhuman powers, and it's like a set of games between the 5 of them. And like first one is like the Dash, but you race a Formula 1 race car, and you like beat the race car.
That's
awesome. The other, like the next level is you shoot fireballs out of your hands against the warship shooting missiles at you.
Yeah,
like things like that. This Newman Athletics. He might, if he hasn't played it, it's like a really weird, obscure one. You can still play it.
Yeah.
You can play it on, not Mugen, but what's it called? MAME.
Oh,
MAME emulator.
Okay.
You can get a hold of it on MAME and play it. It's super fun.
Nice. So that's Anthony. Paul, I forgot. Paul's also like older than me. I'm the youngest one of the group. But I always make fun of him because he sort of had, in my mind, the weirdest progression of consoles. Like he always picked the console that, for the most part, that nobody else was playing. Like his progression was like Master System, Genesis, Master System, TurboGrafx 16, Saturn, I think PS1. Then it becomes like more normal.
More normal, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like the resident, like I said, obscure games and shmup expert. Like he loves himself like a good shooter. Kelly is the resident Vita expert, really into JRPGs, like Queen JRPGs, like played more than I will probably ever own, and visual novels, which I hope we do a visual novel episode soon because I've played a couple of them and they're always ridiculous.
Which ones have you played? Because everyone's been telling me to play Steins Gate.
I haven't played Steins Gate. I've played Doki Doki Literature Club was one that's like it's like an indie game, but it's like I can't explain it to you without spoiling it. But it's visual novel horror. So if you like really intense, creepy stuff, like you'll dig it. How to Full Boyfriend, which is it's like a visual novel dating sim, but you date pigeons. It's all about pigeons.
Okay.
That's one. There's one on the PS4 that I was recently talking about called I think it's called The 7 Mysteries of Fujisawa or something like that, where it's like this, the game is basically that you go into people's minds, try to extract like the confessions out of them. Like basically you get to a point in a conversation where somebody's clearly lying to you about something, and so you go in their mind and it's bejeweled. You have to like fill a gauge like by making combos and stuff, and like the more the gauge gets filled, the more undressed they become until they become naked, which is all censored, and then they're like, I'll tell you anything you want to know.
Oh, so it's like you're breaking down their mental.
Yes.
And then they tell you the truth. Yeah.
Yes, that one is anime as hell, as you probably could have guessed.
I'm watching it. It's fucking anime as shit. It's primo anime.
Fucking hilarious.
There's another one that I had some guys on a podcast, which if you're into GameCube at all, they have a GameCube only podcast called The GameCube Was Cool. 2 Canadian dudes. They're awesome. They were telling me about, I believe it was a Game Boy Advance visual novel, and there's 3 of them.
What the fuck?
Does that ring a bell to you? I'm trying to... Damn.
Is it like Tokimeki Memorial or something?
What was that again?
Tokimeki Memorial? I think that's how you spell it.
Memorial. There it is. I found it on YouTube. Let's see. I watched footage of it. I'll recognize it if it's it. This looks like a anime, not a visual novel. Oh, there's a Super Nintendo game too.
Yeah, this is like an old game series. That's the only one I can think of, because I know they did a Game Boy version of it. I don't know if they did a Game Boy Advance version of it, but no, I've never heard of a Game Boy Advance visual novel.
No, it was Nintendo DS.
Oh, okay. Oh, was it Room 30 something?
Yes.
Where it's like you hold it like a book, and it's like basically a mystery story. Like I've played it, I've beaten it, I own it. I love that game. That game is awesome.
Not full. This is not it. This is
It's like Room 30 something.
Room 309 and
yes.
DS. That's not pulling anything up.
Let me go look for this. I think
it is a mystery. It's like a detective mystery.
Yeah, it's called
Nintendo DS visual novel game.
Hotel Dusk Room 215. Is that it? Hotel Dusk.
That sounds. Maybe that is it. This is all Hotel Dusk 215.
Yeah, 215. You tell me. That's the one I have. It's like a point and click / visual novel type game.
No, this isn't it, but it's the same style.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
There was another one that they were ranting and raving about.
Yeah.
It was like the greatest. They both thought it was like it's in their top. It was like in their top 3 for both of them of all games of all time.
That's awesome.
It's like this
now I gotta know what it is.
Yeah. There's like this world of visual novels where people talk about Stein. The rumor is, I haven't played any of them, but the stories are so good. Like we have this whole like group of gamers that they'll have like a 1 or 2 visual novels that they put in their top 5 or top 10.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking like, damn, I need to try some of these out because people are saying nice stuff.
Yeah, well, it's like a nice, if you've been playing a lot of games, it's like a nice reprieve, because for most of them, the gameplay is minimal.
Yes.
But what it does is it lets them create like the amount of text in like a visual novel is like multiple actual novels usually.
Yeah.
So it like lets people create like these crazy stories that like if they hook you, like you're just like, I'm gonna press A until this is over.
Yeah.
And like you can make choices sometimes and stuff. I don't know, man. There's something like infinitely intriguing about them to me. And so that's Kelly, and then Jeff. Jeff is our UK correspondent. He lives out in the Netherlands.
Is he your Sega dude?
He has played a lot of Sega stuff, but I think he grew up Nintendo.
Really?
Yeah.
I think in the UK, I'd be interested if it seems like I swear Sega Master System and Genesis, which I think it was called, I get mixed up. Was that called the Master System?
The Master System was first, and then the Genesis came after.
There's another name for Master System in the UK.
Oh, for the Genesis, it's called the Sega Mega Drive.
Mega Drive, that's what it was. I think the Mega Drive outsold the Super Nintendo by a massive amount in the UK.
It did. Europe's always been Sega territory, because if I'm not mistaken, and he'll probably yell at me later, but I think his dad... His job like took him overseas, so he went to Japan a few times. So he would bring him back like Game Boy stuff. He's huge into Game Boy, like original Game Boy stuff, and collects like a lot of Super Famicom stuff. He's like a big Nintendo head, but he loves like platformers. He loves indie stuff, like a bunch of that stuff. And he's done a few episodes on our show focusing on like British game developers and British game history. So we've talked about like Bullfrog, we've talked about Team 17, we've talked about like a bunch of these, old school.
Was it called
development teams? Rareware was one of them too.
I think there's a PS2 game called The Getaway that was developed in the UK.
There is a PS2 game called The Getaway. I can't remember who developed it, but that sounds right.
I swear that was a European develop. See if I can find it.
Could be.
There it is. Team Soho, a British first-party game developer. Ha ha! I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I wonder if... I remember that being like... Because I vaguely remember... The game is good, decent. I played it.
Yeah.
And I remember there being like a Game Informer article. You brought up British developers, and I think they were like lauding like this development team for like being like the next big thing coming out of Europe. I don't know.
Gotcha.
I don't know what ended up happening to them. Obviously, that they're not around anymore. But sweet, you guys got a really diverse crew. I need to check out some more episodes. I'm pretty sure it was Paul. Who did you guys share on your Instagram, or does someone handle the Instagram?
I do most of the Instagram, but sometimes Paul will get on there as well.
Well, then you're posting a lot of shit I like, because that's what I think I came across your Instagram. It was either recommended or because Paul's Instagram is Paul's Game Room, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I think I saw Paul's Game Room commenting on a page, and then I clicked on his profile, and then I found Region Free, and then I've been like following you guys for like a while, just because you post lots of good shit. Let people know again where they can find everything, where everyone's Instagram.
Yeah, so
go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, you can find us mostly on Instagram. So that's Instagram.com, and that's at Region Free Gamers Podcast. On Twitter, we're at Region Free Gamer because character limits on Twitter. It's stupid. Okay. We have a Patreon that we run, patreon.com/regionfreegamers.
Oh, nice. What are the rewards?
It starts at as low as $1 and goes up to $5. I think there's 3 tiers, 1, 3, and 5. And it's everything from like join our private Discord server. We're working on bonus content, so bonus episodes that will be exclusive to patrons for like a limited amount of time. They'll get early release on some stuff as well. We also do they'll have access to live streams of our recordings, so they can come and watch us record live unedited, so you get to see all the stupid shit we say in between, like when we take breaks and stuff. The public doesn't get to listen to because it's secret sauce that goes into the show. I think that's it, but we're always working on like new stuff. We also do like monthly polls for people to vote on upcoming topics, and we even have patrons sometimes guest on the show as well. So there's a bunch of stuff in there.
Who's been your favorite guest?
Oh man,
don't worry, no one listens to this, so no one's gonna get angry.
No. It's not that I'm afraid of offending someone, because I just assume everybody's mad at me all the time for something I've said. But it's actually it's tough because we've had a couple. There's this guy on Instagram called The Real Dire 51, I believe. He's a super fun guy to talk to. He was on our Splatterhouse episode. He actually worked alongside the team at Namco when they were doing the Splatterhouse remake for 360 and
360.
PS3.
Yeah.
So he's an author. He's written a couple books, video game books. Super nice guy to talk to. Very like informative episode, like lots of cool stories to tell. We also had Stefan Reese. He's on Instagram as Art of Nintendo Power now, I think.
Okay.
And he's the first and foremost collector of like Nintendo Power artifacts. So if you're a fan of Nintendo Power, you have to like follow him. He collects like original art from Nintendo Power. So like he contacts like the artists that worked on like covers or image illustrations that were in the magazine, and he gets like the original printings of the art. And he displays it at conventions. He also collects like others, like he collects like gameplay counselor jackets, like the Nintendo counselors that you would call on the phone. Like he has the exclusive jackets. He has like files from like their Bibles that they would read from when giving kids like hints that have like notes in them and stuff, like insane stuff. He has, I think there is. So did you read Nintendo Power at all when you were a kid?
I did. I had IGN, Nintendo Power game, not IGN. EGM, Game Informer, Nintendo Power, the whole shebang.
Okay. So do you remember, I think there was a cover, it was like Mega Man 2 or 3, where it's like Mega Man on some sort of board and like a maquette of like Dr. Wily and his spaceship.
Yeah, I have an image in my head. I think it's the one you're talking about.
He owns that maquette. Like he owns the Dr. Wily maquette and the Mega Man sculpt. He owns, I think like issue number 3 or something had like was like Track and Field 2, and there's like these rocket sneakers on the front of it. He owns the physical sneakers with like the rocket boosters attached to them. Just a bunch of like crazy stuff. We got to talk to him about just like his preservation and his collection of Nintendo Power stuff, how he got into it. And he also has like, I think he found or he acquired recently like an Earthbound prototype.
Oh, really?
He has like the craziest,
craziest, rarest. He's gone full. He's gone. He's all in. He's all in.
I think he's sort of moving out of collecting games as much now.
Yeah,
and he's using that to like fund collection of like ephemera, basically like collecting like physical video game objects, like, you know, all that stuff. He also has some of the ink drawings for like some of the Nestor comics that were in Nintendo Power, like just like an endless amount of stuff. So you can follow him on Twitter and Instagram, Art of Nintendo Power. You'll see like insane shit. It's great.
I'm gonna follow him. Yeah, that sounds cool as hell.
For sure.
Thank you so much. We're at 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to. I'm actually gonna drink. And we didn't bring this up. I was a little sad you didn't bring it up, but I didn't want to start talking about this game because it would go another 4 hours. But Mass Effect Legendary Edition is out, and I'm going through Mass Effect 1 and replaying it. And I'm going to this Friday night. I'm going all in on Mass Effect tonight.
You tell me, because I loved the first. I played the first 2. I never played 3.
Me as well.
But I loved the first 2 specifically is like my favorite one. Is the like, I've seen people talk about it. Is the jump like significant? Like, are you like, this is like experiencing this game like all over again?
I've only played 1 out of the Legendary Edition so far because I want to play them all in order. So I can't speak to 2 or 3, but for what I've read, the most improvement went into 1 because 1 was the most janky and all that stuff. And it does... like the UI, the inventory system is completely overhauled. So there's a lot of quality of life with that. The speaking of AI upscaling, the similar thing that people are doing to like Final Fantasy VII backgrounds. Yeah. Instead of redoing all the textures, because there's so many textures across the 3 games, they actually used an AI upscaling model and they ran for all the textures, and it looks pretty good. I'm pretty spoiled. I have a 3090, a 4K screen. I have like all the bells and whistles on. And I'm playing it at 4K, completely max, 60 frames a second. And it looks really good. The game is still like a 15-year-old game. So, I mean, there are some like bare bones aspects to it. But the combat, I can't really remember how bad Mass Effect 1 plays. Because like you, Mass Effect 2 has a little bit more of my memory space.
Yeah, I remember the rover missions, like when you'd go on the planets, those being like jank. Have you done any of those yet?
Yes,
or no?
I've done a lot of those.
Are they better?
Yes, and they have an option where you can like churn it. Some people like the old rover control, I guess, enough that you can go to like the original, which is like dog shit. I was like, yeah, no, the new version's way better. And they also have like the experience and level scaling has been rebalanced. But you can also choose between the original balancing and the new balancing. So like they really hit all the buttons for like Mass Effect fans. Like if you just want if you want to kind of keep it closer to the original experience just with the better graphics and running on your PC, or you can play the rebalanced version with different physics, and I've been enjoying it. Like I haven't been able to put, like you said, more than 4 to 5 hours into a game. Yeah. There's like 1 game a year that I can put more than that much out. And I'm already like 22 hours into Mass Effect. Oh, nice. 1. So
see, like that's the thing too. Like as a package, like 3 beefy RPGs like that, you can't go wrong with that.
For $40, I think it was. Yeah.
No way. I just remember somebody put up like a couple screenshots of Mass Effect 1, like the original and the Legendary, and I was just like, man, I don't remember Mass Effect being this dark. It was like you could barely see anything in like the original game.
Yeah, the visuals are like definitely improved. Yeah. In fact, there are sections of the game with the AI upscaling and the graphics and in 4K that look almost like modern. Yeah. But it's the animations that sort of sell it. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, this is a 15-year-old game. Like in movement, you can tell it's an old game. But other aspects of it, like they really got it close to what I would consider in other aspects, pretty close to modern day modern day graphics.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I will see how Mass Effect 2 and 3 play out, and I actually never watched or exposed myself to the ending of Mass Effect 3 because I saw all the crazy like anger, and then they came out with the extended DLC that I guess fixed the ending, and I never watched any of it because and I was going to try to replay Mass Effect 3. In fact, I would have already played Mass Effect 3 on PC because the modding community, you could have played Mass Effect Remastered a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the one thing, I don't know why it doesn't work, but the original Steam releases for 1, 2, and 3 had no gamepad support. And for some reason, the way, like, even modding it in has been hard. Like, I couldn't find mods to get gamepad support at the time because there's all these high-resolution texture mods for Mass Effect.
Yeah.
So I always put 3 off. So now I'm excited. Like, all right, I'm going to start from 1. I'm going to re-go through it, and I'm going to finally like see it. And I've been able to keep myself from spoilers for like 15 years. So we'll see.
You're going to have to go through the heartbreak of sacrificing crew members all over again.
Yeah, I do. I'm on the mission in Mass Effect 1 where you have to, it's the first choice of sacrificing a crew member. I remember who it is. It's the girl or the girl warrior or Caden the biotic.
Yeah, that's right.
There was one decision in Mass Effect 2. I don't know if you remember this, but you remember the species, the Krogan? They're like the big warrior ones.
Yeah.
That the Solarians have augmented their genetics so that they can't reproduce very well.
That's right.
To slow down because they were like killing everybody and taking everything over.
Yeah.
And you have this Krogan guy in your party who's a badass, and I always used him, and I was really connected to him.
He was my favorite.
Yeah. And you get to a point where you can reverse, I think they call it the genophage is the terminology, but you have the opportunity to undo like the genetic, whatever they did to make it so this, and I couldn't do it because I was like, I love him, he's a badass, but like your race killed everybody. You guys were massacring everybody. So, and he got super mad at me. And
I'm
like,
sure he did.
Oh, I was super butthurt about it. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry, but you're gonna murder everyone. I can't do it.
Those are the best games when they like make you think, like feel like that, where you're like, I gotta do this because I this is what I would do. Yeah. But I like you so much. Yeah. And then they get pissed at you and you're like, fuck.
I think I might have sat around for a good 20, 30 minutes trying to decide what to do.
Trying to figure it out.
The first time I played that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I ended up cheating and like Googling like what happens. Like, okay,
gotcha.
I know I don't want to do it, but unless like, do I not get access to his best weapon or something? Like, is it going to punish me? And then I found out it doesn't really punish you as far as like gear. I'm like, okay, sorry, bro. You're gonna stay. You know, whatever you would call it. Your genetic vasectomy stays in place. Sweet, man. Well, I really appreciate the time again. Like,
no, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, that's like I reach out to people. Most people don't respond, and most people don't make time. So like, I appreciate spending the time. Anytime anyone else wants to come on. Anytime you guys want to promote anything, just let me know. I can throw it in my stories, whatever. I appreciate it. It was a good conversation. I will definitely be... Yeah. What's your personal Instagram?
I have a personal Instagram, but to be honest, I don't use it very much. It's welcome to the game, so it's welcome the number 2 the game. But I haven't posted on there very much just because I run the Region Free Gamers one.
So we can get you through the Region 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You can if you want chat or anybody else wants to talk, I'm always on there just chopping it up. I've slowed down with the posting just because like life's gotten in the way, but I'm hoping to pick it back up a little more shortly.
Sweet, dude. Well, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, this was fun, man.
Yeah, man. We'll have you guys anyone on the podcast. Hopefully you didn't butcher their gaming taste.
Yeah, I know.
They end up listening to
They're going to come on here. They're going to say completely... I was going to be completely fucking wrong.
Sweet, dude. Well, all right, everybody. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.